So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion
Second.
by Dr. Meyer to return to open session, second by Mr. Braswell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening and to thank Supervisor Yakubowski for attending this evening as well. I'd like to remind everybody to please silence or turn off their cell phones. There are a lot of us here, so we don't want any interruptions. I'd like to ask Mr. Blaine to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no public hearing this evening. We'll move to the consent agenda items. Dr. Martin.
Madam Chair, on the consent agenda this evening are the minutes of the October 9th, 2017 regular meeting, donations which are usual and customary, and the procedures for managing data for the Head Start program. Staff asks that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Motion by Ms. Shelley to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Second by Dr. Meyer. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0 to approve the consent agenda items. Draw your attention to the informational items. And we'll move on to item 10.01 under instructional highlights, Battlefield Middle School Theater Monologue Project. Mrs. Flenard.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Baker and Dr. Martin. This month's Fine Arts highlight comes from Battlefield Middle School's 8th grade theater arts classes. To represent the recent monologue project, Jacob Armitage and Morgan Cook are here to share 2 monologues selected from Lori Ann Davis and Christine Kolonick's book, Finally, Monologues That Work. Jacob and Morgan rehearsed both in class and at home for several weeks, analyzing their characters and creating a backstory and receiving feedback from both their peers and their teacher, Michelle Sanders. Ms. Sanders is immensely proud of their work that all of her students put into this year's project and is excited for Jake and Morgan to represent Battlefield Middle School this evening.
Embarrassing? Last night crossed the line of embarrassing. You would not believe what my dad did. Actually, if you knew him or even met him for 1 second, you would believe it. Anyways, last night was the Blink 182 concert. Since my dad doesn't think my friends and I are old enough to go alone, he volunteered to chaperone, which frightened me because he loves to make a fool of himself in front of my friends. So it's 6:30 and my friends are at my house and we're all ready to go, and out of his room walks, or should I say skateboards, my dad. You wouldn't believe it. He was wearing ripped jeans, a black Blink 182 t-shirt that he cut so you could see his stomach, and he dyed his hair green. My father had green spiked hair. I wanted to die. My mom was laughing and my friends were frozen in shock. I was mortified the entire night. And, well, he had the time of his life. And to top off my embarrassment, the first thing he said was, ready for the far out concert, dudes? Maybe we'll see some hot chicks. What is wrong with him? What planet does he come from? And you know what's scary? He does this stuff all the time. God, is it possible to put your parents up for adoption?
Listen, Mr. Gold, I'm really a charming lady, and this is all a terrible misunderstanding. You see, I really shouldn't be here in the principal's office. You see, Miss Victor left the room just for a moment to take Amy to the nurse. Really, that girl is such a klutz. So, while she was gone, she asked us to please behave. Since no one was listening, I simply tried to control the class by doing a few Jim Carrey impressions. Don't you see the stunning resemblance? We even have the same first name. Okay, guess not. So the point was, I was merely trying to help, not distract. It was an accident when I knocked over the globe, which knocked over the lizard tank, which set the lizards free. It wasn't my fault all the girls started screaming. You don't look so happy. You know, I think Miss Victor has a thing for you. I mean, you can tell by the way she gives you the eyes. I mean, can you blame her? You're really such a great guy. So what do you say? You gonna let this one slide? Yep, didn't think so. See ya.
And we'll move on to item 10.02, benefits of Google Classroom at Chancellor Elementary.
Thank you. Google Classroom is a technology-based learning management system that is used by teachers in Spotsylvania County Public Schools. Educators have found that using this application helps to streamline assignments, boost collaboration, and foster seamless communication to make teaching more productive and meaningful. Classroom teachers have found that using Google Classroom enables them to easily distribute assignments, send feedback, and track student progress. With Google Classroom, teachers can manage assignments and communicate with students and their guardians in one convenient place. Tonight, we will hear from Chancellor Elementary staff and students on the benefits and uses of Google Classrooms as a resource.
Thank you, Ms. Flenard. Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Baker and Dr. Martin, this evening, Chancellor Elementary comes to you with instructional highlight number 2, where we wanted to focus on technology in the classroom, and as Ms. Flenard pointed out, specifically Google Classroom. Tonight I brought with me a third grade teacher, Sandy Azzarelli, our ITRT, Karen Clore, and third grade student, Rochelle Barnett. She looks a little pale, but it's not because she's not feeling well. She's also in the Christian Youth Theater production of James and the Giant Peach, which premieres this Friday, so that's why she's looking a little white. We just want to bring to you the perspective of a teachers and student for Google Classroom.
Good evening. Now, before I get started, I want you to know that there are lots of wonderful teachers out there that are doing probably bigger and better things than me, so I'm not the expert on this, but I'm learning. So I wanted to show you how it started. 2 years ago, I was lucky enough to be part of the pilot program. I'm not sure if you can see that. And I was allowed 10 Chromebooks, and then after I kind of got into it, they gave me 5 more. So I had 15 wonderful Chromebooks in my classroom. And with it, I decided, what am I going to use this piece of technology? And I decided that I'm going to use it to increase my writing with my third graders. So my goal was 100% of the students were going to at least do proficient level by the year's end. Mind you that I had some third graders that did not like to write, hated to write, it would be like pulling teeth to even get a sentence. So then Ms. Clore, my wonderful ITR teacher, helped me out. And so we came up with this. So here is the first writing prompt we started in the beginning of the year.
At the beginning of the year, this was just a measure for a baseline. We were doing like an action research to see if the methods that we were trying really were going to make a difference. The TGEM is our teacher growth model for our evaluations. And Sandy and I both committed to each other that we were going to support each other and that we were going to use her student data for both of our TGEMs. One of the things that takes on both our part is trust. As you can see from the slide, Sandy trusted me and I trusted her, and we were willing to get out and try some new things because we felt like through our partnership we could have some success with this.
So one of the first things I did was create a Google Classroom. And I'll show you in a few minutes what I use my classroom for. And I also created my own site where students can go on through Google Classroom. And all of a sudden we noticed, oh, look at mid-year. You notice in yellow is the beginning, and then mid-year we only had 2 students who did not meet that benchmark. So we thought, okay, let's keep going, trying new things. And here we are at the end. You'll notice there's no yellow. So we met our goal, and each child was writing past the proficiency.
And not only did they meet they all were advanced at the end of the year. So it was quite a change.
And so, of course, that helped us to those wonderful SLL scores. So they help. So I wanted to show you real quick what I see when I'm using Google Classroom. So my point of view, and then I'll show you Rochelle's. So one of the things that I do is we do interactive things in Google Classroom. I give them a template, so each child gets that in their own Google Classroom assignment, and they move things around. And so like this assignment, if it ever comes up, has like 10 slides, and they interactively move it around. There you go, you can see that. And then I will check it, I will comment it, send it back to them, hey, fix this. And so the feedback is instant. So you can see they had like all these different slides to do where they move the numbers. So we do it interactive. We also like to write a lot, don't we? Mm-hmm. And one of our, we've written 4 or 5 things already on the computer. This one's called On Vacation, and we had to do personal narratives this 9 weeks. And you'll see it's all organized for me. So the students will write, they turn it into me, just like a piece of paper, and together we edit. I comment, hey, work on this. Hey, how about add a better beginning. So it's constant right back to get it right away. And so they work on it. So in the classroom we're doing it, or at home I do it. So they do it. And you can see, I'll pick on Rochelle. They first do their pre-write. And there it is. And so I give them the direction of where they need to go. And then they actually do the writing, and you can see right here. And there it is, and there's her writing. It's wonderful. And then, so we have interactive, we have writing, and by the way, we're on our computers every day because I have Chromebooks, and I have more than 5 or 10. I also assign videos, like on Main Idea, and then they play games and take a little test. So during the rotations in the morning, this is one of their spots that they have to visit during our guided reading. And then sometimes there's just a video with other tests that they have to go through. So, and then sometimes I have them play games. Okay? We also, like today, they took a test to get ready for our CFAs actually. They had to take a test on North and South America. They had 10 questions to answer on there, and then it took maybe 5 minutes, if even that long, and then we went over together the results. And I hit responses, and
It's loading.
It's loading. It will give me how many students answered 50%, 60%, 70%, and we go over the questions that were missed. You can see it's spinning. I can't control technology. I also, here it comes. There we go. And there are the results of the quiz today. So again, it's instant, it's fast. I also have been to save paper and save trees. I also take worksheets. Like, for example, they're getting ready to do this one for Thanksgiving, and I made it into a Google slide, and they're actually doing the worksheet there, and we make it in a slide, and they can all see their answers. And Rochelle's getting ready to show you how she gets to go on and work and also see everybody's work. If this old lady can do it, anybody can do it. Okay? All right, Rochelle, you want to show me yours? So X out of that, and then click on there, and there you go. All right.
Speaks in the speaker, the microphone.
There you go. All right.
So your teacher will pop up, and then she puts on a bunch of different assignments, like, for instance, on vacation. Or brain pop. and it will pop up what she wanted you to do, and then you can click. Once you do it, you click open, and then there's a slot down here that says turn in, but I already did it, so it says unsubmit, and you click on it, and then it will pop up done. And then your teacher, if you click on about, there's a bunch of different fun sites you can go on. And Miss Azzarelli made her own site. And on the side, you click on if you want to do math, poetry, reading, science, spelling, or writing. And then it will list a bunch of different math games you can play. And then you can, if you also go to about, you can add other people's stories and then you can read it. So for instance, monster writing. You can read the other students. So.
It's loading. There it goes.
For instance, Sarah.
So this was another writing that they did around Halloween time.
And then you can read the writing.
Does she have a picture? Uh-huh. And then scroll. It's coming, spinning. There you go.
And then there's the picture.
There's her picture. So they get to see each other's writings and how they're doing. There you go.
And then the teacher can take off the comment bar if she really wanted to. So.
You want to show them that one?
And then we have when I was younger, you can see other people's.
Mm-hmm. Some examples. There you go.
So there's the jump. There's the day I got ran over.
Yep.
When I almost fell off my bed. Other not so pleasant stories. So yeah.
So there you go. Good job.
Thank you all for those instructional highlights. On to item 11, recognitions and awards. Mrs. Flannard.
Thank you. Tonight, we celebrated the outstanding student artwork from 5 of our schools before the board meeting began. This month, we are displaying artwork from Chancellor Middle School, art teacher Shannon McKay, Post Oak Middle School, art teacher Casey Branham, Spotsylvania Middle School, art teacher Ramona Morris, Livingston Elementary, art teacher Natalie Ruffin, and Smith Station Elementary, art teacher Jeannie Carr.
Ms. Flannard, would you continue with the Superintendent's Art Award?
Thank you. The November Superintendents Award winner for Outstanding Visual Art goes to Annabella Clarkson. Miss Clarkson is a 10th grader at Riverbend High School. Her artwork will hang in Dr. Baker's office this entire month. We would like for Miss Clarkson and her art teacher, Jerry Mann, to come forward to be recognized for their outstanding accomplishment. If we have any of Annabella's family or friends in the audience, could they stand to be recognized, please? Make sure it's good, Mr. Wolf.
Mrs. Flenard, would you continue with 1103, Senior Honor Choir Recognition?
Thank you. Senior Honor Choir is a highly competitive auditioned honor choir sponsored by Virginia Choral Directors Association. Only 132 students from the entire Commonwealth of Virginia are selected based on their vocal skills, demonstrated through singing, challenging solo literature, and also sight reading. These students from Chancellor High School were selected this year. Alto, Mia Jackson. Tenor, Christopher Jones. And bass, Kimball Roberts. This is the highest number of students ever selected from Chancellor High School. And in addition, Kimball Roberts scored #1 in the state with the highest audition score of all the competing students. And if we have any family and friends here to support our students, if you could please stand to be recognized.
Amendment 11.04, Junior and Senior Regional Orchestra.
Thank you. The following students auditioned for and earned a place on the junior or senior regional orchestra groups. It's an extremely difficult to do task as they were competing against students from Loudoun, Fauquier, Prince William, Stafford, as well as Spotsylvania County Public Schools. If our junior regional orchestra could please come forward. From Chancellor Middle School, Faith McCrossan, first violin. From Spotsylvania Middle School, Sabrina Van, first violin. As well as highest score, I read. From Chancellor High School, Tyler Miranda, first violin. As well as Kara Seeley, second violin. From Cortland High School, Jordan Teft, second violin. From Massaponax High School, Hannah Nguyen, second violin. From Riverbend High School, Anna Thompson, first violin. Rona Ansori, second violin. And Adam Pellegrin, bass, also highest score. And from Spotsylvania High School, Candace Amick, cello. Our junior regional orchestra. If we have any family and friends for our students in the orchestra, for our junior students, if you could please stand to be recognized. And our senior regional orchestra for grades 9 through 12, from Cortland High School, Sean Carl, second violin. The following students are all from Massaponax High School. Carolyn Van, first violin. Tamona Mims, second violin. Nathan Richardson, second violin alternate. Also from Riverbend High School, we have Cornelius Ellis, viola, Anthony Sorensen, viola, and Abigail Leidy, cello, also highest score. And our orchestra directors for these talented students, if they are in the audience, if they could come forward. Catherine Buchanan, Cortland High School. James Forey, Massaponax High School. Brian Jacobs, Spotsylvania High School. Michelle Kurick, Chancellor Middle and Chancellor High School. Allison Rolfe, Riverbend High School. Nicholas Vinat, Spotsylvania Middle School.
And then 11.05, 2017 AC Award recipient.
Thank you. The annual National Association for the Education of Homeless Children and Youth Awards recognize individuals, organizations, and schools for the outstanding service they have provided to children and youth experiencing homelessness. Award recipients are selected through a screening and selection process overseen by a dedicated committee of state coordinators and other experts in the field. This year, Spotsylvania County Public Schools social worker Michelle Swisher accepted the award on behalf of the Spotsylvania County for Outstanding Program. As of October 1st, 2017, we have had more than 250 students who've been identified as McKinney-Vento. As past trends have shown, by the end of the school year, this number will continue to increase. We thank all of the school social workers, staff, and volunteers who help support our students. Ms. Swisher, we are inspired by all the school social workers' dedication and commitment to Spotsylvania County children and their families. Thank you for accepting this award on all of their behalf. Congratulations on receiving national recognition.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to take a moment so that everybody understood that this is National Homelessness Awareness Month. There are 1.3 million children in our country that are homeless. Spotsylvania is not immune to that. But due to the outpouring of generosity and support of our community, our school board, our school personnel, our school counselors, teachers, administrators, and my awesome school social work team that is here to support us tonight, we make a difference in Spotsylvania County. And I would like to say that Spotsylvania County is one of those counties that accepts all diversities of people. And I'm very proud and was so very proud when we were in Chicago to accept this award on our behalf. So thank you all very much.
Congratulations to all who received awards. We'll now move on to public comments, item 12.01. Dr. Martin.
Good evening. The public comment segment of our board meetings is a time to receive recommendations, suggestions, concerns, and comments from the general public. Each speaker is allotted 5 minutes, and we ask that they clearly state the name, address, and/or voting district for the board. A speaker may request additional time from the board should one's 5-minute allotment expire. We ask that you keep your comments focused on the issues and that all speakers maintain a level of decorum and mutual respect for one another. Our first speaker is Carlos Moore.
I also wanted to point out that there are a lot of extra seats up here now. For those of you that are standing, if you'd like to take a seat, there are some seats up here.
Good evening. My name is Carlos Moore. I am an art teacher at Chancellor High School, a parent. I have had 2 students that have graduated from the county schools, and I have a granddaughter that is a junior at Chancellor, and I started teaching here in 1989. So I've done my time, and I continue to enjoy what I'm doing. But I'm here tonight. I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak, first of all. But I'm here tonight, but it's been brought to my attention that there have been some issues of concern. I don't know why I'm talking to them. Can I turn around? Can't turn around? Okay. Some issues concerning some protests that have taken place with some of our youth and some of our athletes. One of the concerns is, what right have those that disagree with them, what right do they have to say you're wrong? What right do these young athletes have to protest? They both have the same rights. The people that oppose what they're doing, as well as the student athletes that are protesting. So we're about the same, because we have been given these rights in this country, the great country of ours, to have the right to protest. And I think all they're doing is exercising their rights. I'm not sure if anybody else is going to speak on this tonight. I hope they do. I'd like to hear what they're going to say. But from our point of view as teachers, this is a teaching moment. And I ask my students, because I don't have a student that does not stand during my pledge, because I give them an opportunity to voice their protests, their disagreement, but then I also educate them as to know what you're protesting about. Know why you're protesting, and then understand that this country has been to a point where we have provided those that have an opportunity to confront the oppressor. If we go back in our history, this country was founded on protests. It was founded by our forefathers who protested opposition, ridicule, discrimination of all types. And this is our background. So if somebody chooses to protest for whatever reason is, we need to acknowledge the fact, respect that they're willing enough to kneel down. If we look at the definition of what protest is bringing attention to an issue or concern that you may disagree with. So you protest, you speak out. And I think they've done it in a silent manner. And then their form of protest is kneeling. Now, I'm a Christian, and I believe in my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. But when I pray, sometimes I kneel down. When I go and I see some tragedy, and I've been an EMS, EMT, firefighter, I've seen some tragedy, I've kneeled down at a scene and said a prayer. That wasn't in protest. That was me paying homage, being submitted, showing my gratitude, and giving some acknowledgement to grace and mercy that I've been given. So in a way, that was protest. And those that are biblical scholars, Prince of Peace protested the opposition. And all he did was say, love thy brother. If we followed those words, we wouldn't be trying to persecute these young people. We would not be out there saying they're making a political statement. Now, do I agree with everything that's going on in this country as far as protests are concerned? Not really. But some of the people that I've met at some of the protests I've been in, I knew exactly what I was doing after I learned my lesson. So this is an opportunity where we as adults can educate our youth, athletes, whatever they are, male or female, because we're in a society right now that there are some trials and tribulations that we're going through. And it's based on the decisions that the adults have made, not the children. And if we don't wake up as adults in this county, in this community, in this world, where are we going? And where is the end going to come? Because we sit up and watch this TV, this idiot box up here that we get, and the thing, I tell them it's a drug. And they protest the restrictions that I have. But I'm telling you, if you're going to use it in a positive manner. Yes, I want you to protest. Because if something's wrong, I want you to step up. And I want you to say, hey, I disagree, but then articulate what your protest is about. And so they're protesting what? Discrimination. There's some race issues that a lot of us are refusing to deal with. If we can deal with these race issues, we can cut down a lot of these problems that we have in this community, in this county, and in these schools. And I've been at Chancellor long enough. I was the first black male teacher there. And we don't have the race problems that some of the other schools do. We have some, yes, we do. But I make sure my protest is to stand up for these kids and give them some love. And so I hope that anybody else wants to persecute them, stand up, and I'll be glad to talk with you, and we can sit down and communicate. Then we can find where we have something in common, not so much difference. And my clock is running, but if y'all want to give me some more time, I'll take it. Thank you, Dr. Baker. And if I've offended anyone, I apologize that their feelings are that sensitive. But we can sit back and talk about it. I'm serious. We can sit back and talk about it, and it is a learning moment. And I hope that all of us can learn from these kids And sometimes we got to stand up. Thank you.
Joe McBride.
Good evening, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to address you. I like what the first speaker said, and that's what this is all about, open dialogue. My feeling, though, is we should not be allowing students during a Pledge of Allegiance or national anthem to be showing disrespect. I mean, they're doing it while we are doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Do they want to do it after? So be it. I've been told that the school board have their hands tied because the Supreme Court in 1943 came out with West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett. And I've been quoted this many, many times. I went to the library, did a lot of reading on LexisNexis and the law reviews and things like that. And it really comes down to that particular Supreme Court decision protected students from being forced to salute the American flag and say the Pledge of Allegiance in public schools. And I agree with that. Shouldn't force anybody to verbally give their allegiance to anybody or to anything or to any country. You can't force that. But we have plenty of people in this country, plenty of people in this county who have given their lives, given their time, given all their energies to the military. And I think it's offensive to be going to the knee for such, during that. They're not doing it any other time. They're doing it when we're supposed to be given a Pledge of Allegiance or a national anthem. You know, 3 of my children went through the Spotsylvania school system, and you guys did a bang-up job. I mean, I'm very impressed. But every year, I would get a piece of paper that had, actually 2 pieces of paper. It had everything that their T-shirts or their shirts could not say because it was offensive. But then you also teach my children, actions speak louder than words. So words actually take a lower level of importance. Well, if you can restrict what my kid's T-shirt says, I think you can restrict the actions that they take and when they take them. And that's all I have to say. And again, I think that first speaker gave a very, very eloquent, and I think we're at mutual on a lot of different issues, but I still say it's the timing of when they decide to do that. Not what they do, but when they do it. And again, you know, if all of a sudden we were to force people to actually recite the Pledge of Allegiance, 1943, this is right after World War II. I mean, Hitler was killing people for not pledging allegiance to his regime. And I'm in no way saying we force people to do that. But on the other hand, it has a lot to do with timing and giving other people respect. And those other people are people who have friends and family in the military, friends and family that work in this whole region for the federal, state, and local governments. And I think it comes down to respect. And thank you very much for your time. God bless.
Kim Wyman.
Can I shut this? It's bothering me. Can I shut the laptop? Thank God. OCD, sorry. My name is Kim Wyman, 50105 McManus Drive. I am a taxpayer. I don't have kids and I don't have a dog in this fight. But I do have a couple of things to tell you. Number one, I don't care why these guys knelt. Someone up there told me that they were kneeling just to be knuckleheads, although I have a better word for that, but it might be disrespectful. They were doing it. I don't care why they were doing it. I don't care if they were doing it to tell their coach to go to hell. They have a right. I don't care whose uniform they're wearing. They have a right. If you don't like it, put your big girl panties on, or your big boy. They have a right. I have a right to offend people. Now, I will tell you, kneeling during that Pledge of Allegiance hurts me. I have bad knees. It hurts me physically. I was raised to respect the flag and respect other people. It hurts me. And I'm a Cowboys fan, so wearing this Kaepernick jersey really hurts. It does. It's painful. People think I like these guys. But what hurts me more is the fact that anyone has the right to tell me I have to stand up, I have to be respectful, I can't silently protest. This is a respect. By the way, I've been protesting since January. I've been marching, carrying signs, shouting obscenities at people. I know what a disrespectful protest looks like. This, respectful. I'm not doing anything to tick you off. I'm not shouting you down, because I do that. I did it this morning in Stafford. I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm saying I disagree. And they might be kneeling just to be knuckleheads. I know if you told me not to stand, or that I had to stand, I'd sit my butt down. If you told me I had to sit down, I stand up. And if you tell me not to touch a hot stove, I check to see if it's hot. Ask my husband. I do it all the time. What do you mean? Is it hot? I do things just to get a rise out of people. If you're offended by what I say or do, get over it. If you're offended that I knelt and yet you fought in the military to give me that right to kneel, to give me that right to stand here and speak to all of you, and you think these kids need to be punished, okay, run some laps, but you don't have the right to make anyone stand. You know you're opening yourself up to a lawsuit if you put any rule on this. Supreme Court decided on it. Other cases have been brought since 46, or 43, or whatever. I'm bad with numbers. Other cases have been brought. It's been decided. We don't need this lawsuit. We don't need this stupidity. If you shut up and let them kneel, they'll get over it real quick. If you make a big deal out of this, think about when you were in high school. We were all knuckleheads at one point. We do stupid things just to get a rise out of you. If you let them get a rise out of you, you know they're going to make it a bigger deal, and you'll blow it up. All of you are smarter than this. I don't have kids, and I know this. So I'm getting a little off point. I think you all know where I stand, sit, or kneel on this. I don't like kneeling for the pledge. I think it's a dumb way to protest. But I don't like being told not to. And all of you know that. You are better than this. And for anyone who thinks you have the right to tell me, my fictional child, my husband, or my pets that they need to stand, sit, or kneel, you can go to hell. No offense. Well, a little offense. I'm an atheist, so I don't think it's the same level of offense. Maybe it is. I think you don't understand the difference between a respectful protest and a disrespectful protest. I think you know the difference. I don't think a lot of people understand. This is a disrespectful protest. This is a respectful protest. You know this. You're smarter than this. This is a non-issue. And I can tell because your eyes are glazing over. You're like, yeah, we know, but we gotta listen. So that's my time. Well, I have a minute left. I could sing for you if you want. Shout out to the art students. They did amazing. And I've got to go to another meeting, so I don't get to stay and listen to everybody, but thank you for listening to me.
Gill. So.
Good evening. I'm Gill. So I reside in Berkeley District at 3140 Summit Crossing Road. My purpose tonight is to reflect on last Friday and to come here to express my appreciation for the fact of what took place last Friday. In this county, given the wisdom of the board and the perseverance and the executability of our superintendent, we exercised an opportunity to recognize people for having sacrificed for this country. It was called Veterans Day prior to the Saturday. And it was something that I've been doing specifically at Cedar Forest for 10 years. A tradition began by Mr. Strong, the principal there, and Ms. Williams, now the principal, who's been there for at least 3 years. This was her 3rd year, continues that tradition. It's a tradition that I think means a lot to a lot of people. So on behalf of, obviously, I was not the only veteran there, nor active duty person there. A lot were, different uniforms, but all with the same commitment and dedication. And that is to volunteer. No one forced them to. They volunteered to serve our country. And there are people that believe sometimes that freedom has no price. Freedom has a price. It has a cost. It has a demand, and that is to sacrifice oneself for the greater good so that all people can be free, not privileged, but free to exercise, obviously, their life. I'm not here to talk about kneeling or anything else. I'm here to use 2 words that have great meaning. Thank you. And I've been blessed with my service, almost 30 years of it. But in that environment last Friday, and that was taking place in a lot of locations within our county because of what it is you have continued. And that is a policy that we use, Veterans Day, as a teaching and learning event. And I can assure you that took place. And I've had, blessed again, I've had generals pin awards on me. That was great, and I was proud of that. But when a young person in elementary school comes to you, or to me in this particular case, and to others during that particular day, and says, thank you, and adds, for your service, sir. And that was not just me being in uniform, a young person. Many of them did the same thing to other veterans and active duty personnel that day. And it's a blessing to have this county and its children being provided an opportunity to understand and to respect that service. And so the comeback to all of this is thank you for your service. The comeback to all of that is we can't do it alone, so our comeback to that is, and I'll use it because my son uses it as well, and that is thank you for your support. The military can't do anything without that critical support. And so I'm here tonight to say to you, thank you for what you're doing and continuing. And there is no greater service than the teachers and the principals, this collective group, and those that we're blessed to have that can set, if you will, standards and character support for our young people because they are the next generation, and we need to respect that fact every day. But again, thank you very much for what you've done, and I hope that this continues because I think it's a blessed thing to be doing. Have a good evening.
Tanya White.
Good evening. I'm Tanya White. I live at 9010 Judiciary Drive, Spotsylvania, Virginia. My husband and I have owned that home, built it in 2000, and have lived in the Spotsylvania area for about 26 years. We are both transplants here. We both came from different places, and we've made our home here. We've raised 2 children here. We have a son that is almost 17 years old and is currently a student and a football player at Cortland High School. He is one of the ones that have been taking a knee. I'm here really to represent him, but I'm also here to represent every child in Spotsylvania schools, not just mine. Not black, not white, not boy, not girl, every single one. Their right to protest nonviolently, peacefully, respectfully will be protected. I'm firmly, firmly confident in that. Spotsylvania County, the surrounding areas in our nation, are not without its issues. We all know that. To pretend that they're not there, naive, sometimes easier, but they're there. I am so proud of these boys. I'm so proud of the teachers. I'm proud of our coaches for supporting them, for loving them through it, for remaining the utmost integrity and professionals, and representing Spotsylvania County schools as they should, but also supporting these boys and their right to be game changers. My son, his name is Zen White. I'm sharing that last, number one, because he's Zen White the fourth. His dad is the third, his grandfather, Junior. He is a proud veteran, probably the most patriotic man I've ever known. He served in Vietnam proudly. He went to FAMU University and chose to enlist because he loved his country that much. He was wounded in Vietnam. He has a Silver Star and a Purple Heart. He supports his grandson, his namesake. He went to war so that he could have that right. I will go to war so that he can have that right, but more importantly, so that every single child can. I believe that they will make a difference. I know these kids. I've talked to my son about it. I've talked to his friends about it. I've even talked to other parents about it. They're not taking a knee just 'cause. The ones that have stood with them that didn't take a knee but stood locked and with their hands on their shoulders, they didn't do it just 'cause. They know why. And I think that they will make a difference. They are creating a dialogue. They will continue to do so. It is not easy, but change never is. So that is all that I came here to say. I didn't even know that I would choose to speak tonight. But I will say this, in honor of my father-in-law, who is 81 years old. If you've met him, many of you have, you'll never forget him. He is a proud, proud veteran. He fought, but he fought, not just for when you choose that my son should protest. That's not what it's about. This is the land of the free and the brave, both. And so we have to do what's right in terms of supporting them, no matter what our personal beliefs are. As a parent, I wish he wasn't maybe doing this, but I'm so, so proud. And I will fight and I will serve him in any way that I can to support him in his right to do so. His right and every other child in this county and beyond. Thank you.
Sarah Defani.
Hi, I am so glad to finally be here in front of everybody. I am here because I disagree with the kneeling. I don't necessarily disagree with the protest, and I just feel as though there's a better time and a better place, and I feel as though the board has really failed the students here because they have missed the teaching opportunity that they have spoken about given, because they have not, until Veterans Day, given any veterans or any parent the opportunity to address this situation. I emailed everybody here. I heard back from 2 until you all found out that I was upset that I only heard from 2. Then I heard from more of you. But I had to go to the county supervisors before that happened. I feel as though I am not trying to take away these students' right. I don't know where we got off topic. No one wants to take away their right to protest. What I would like is for us to say, well, let's bring in some people who disagree with that. The veterans, there are plenty of them. I have some letters here from them. I have the VFW's national statement. I have a statement from a gentleman, Gary Rolla. He is from the Knights of Columbus. I told him I would read this on his behalf. He's a 4th degree, patriotic degree, 20-year military veteran whose male military members sacrificed themselves for all rights, for all Americans' right to free speech, and et cetera. And on that note, it hurts a lot to see the children kneeling. I have not attended many high school football games in a long time, and I'm surprised the school and the coaches allow this to happen. It is not the time nor the place for this type of behavior. Many are following along in order to be contrary. I know that we would disagree with that. That's not what it says here. Young athletes need to understand there's a way to change things. That's to get involved in their local community and volunteer locally at the food bank or Micah Ministries, Habitat for Humanity. There's other volunteer organizations. If they do not like the policy and laws of the government, then voice their opinion through voting, if old enough, and by writing their elected representatives. You do not have to be 18 to write or send an elected representative a respectful letter or email correspondence to voice your concerns on issues or laws. As I get older, the lack of reverence and respect for the anthem, flag, and institutions that made our nation great and different more than any other nation, and the reason immigrants flock to it, shows our own citizens' ignorance of their history and lack of gratitude of having been born in a country like the USA. In my humble opinion, all I or anyone can do is pray, vote, write, and hope our elected representatives and fellow citizens wake up. This may not be paradise, but I'm sure it can get a lot worse. Keep your chin up, keep smiling. I know we don't all agree with that. But what we have not afforded these kids is the right to learn why people disagree. I didn't even know until tonight for sure why they were kneeling. They have been kneeling all year long, and it took Veterans Day, this meeting, for me to even know. I've emailed a lot of people. I've sent out a lot of emails. This is the first kind of definite, they're protesting discrimination. I understand that now. But did I understand that the first time I saw it happen? No, I didn't. I wasn't sure. Have they been protested against? Have they been discriminated against? Because I would like to know. I would like to know if Spotsylvania County Police are discriminating against minorities in this county. But I don't know because it's not being talked about. It's not even being discussed because we don't all agree. So we're just, let's not talk about it. But that's not fair because there's a lot of people who disagree with that. We all deserve a voice. And we don't deserve to be spoken to as though our feelings are being hurt. I have 75 to 80 years of military service in my own family. That's between my brothers and my father, my children's father, and their uncle. That doesn't include cousins. That doesn't include my aunts and uncles. That doesn't include my great-grandparents. That doesn't include my grandparents. 75 to 80 years. 4 brothers in 3 different branches of the service. So I do take offense to this, and I take offense that people sit up here and they laugh. They laugh. Because my family put their lives on the line for this country, and we deserve to have a voice. My time's up?
Forgive me for interrupting, just want to let you know your time has expired.
Okay, and so I'm assuming there's no more time.
You can request additional time from the
Can I have
board chair.
additional time?
I'll make a motion that we extend our time.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
I so appreciate it. This next portion is also in reference to this. This is something that my daughter had happen. She is a member of the Cortland High School band. And I've been very honest with her, and her father has been honest with her as to how we feel about this, and I've been honest with her coaches. I've told her that if she feels the need to talk about it with her friends, she can talk about it, because that's what we're here for, free speech. She was discussing this matter on the bus, and her coach asked her not to discuss it. She mentioned it to me. I didn't mention it to the coach. I didn't bring it up. But the coach brought it up to me, so I'm going to bring it up to you. The only other situation, this is an email correspondence from her coach. And this starts with a whole another situation having nothing to do with the flag, having to do with something else that's going on within the band. But at the end of the letter, she felt it necessary to mention this to me. The only other situation I have heard Emma discussing was that she may be pulled from the marching band if another member of the football team knelt during the anthem. When I heard Emma discussing this animatedly on the bus to Hermitage, I immediately told her she needed to not talk about the issue while with the band. Less than half an hour later, I heard her talking about potentially being pulled again, and I did not get on her for it, already telling her she needed to not discuss the sensitive issue when with the band, because you never know whose feelings she could hurt or offend. There were 2 other band parents sitting next to me who also agreed the topic was something that should be kept out of the band. I can understand that. But I'm telling you this, that if those boys are going to continue to kneel and you are not going to listen or bring in some type of guidance, somebody who can discuss this with them, some professional who can discuss this with them. If you're not going to do that, then I am not going to tell my daughter that she cannot discuss this on the bus, in the band room, in the school, in the cafeteria, on the football field. I don't care where she is. She will discuss it if she wants to. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that's all of the speakers that signed up.
Is there anybody else who didn't sign up that would like to address? You may start with the front and work our way back.
Good evening to you all. My name is Jermaine Jenkins. I understand all the concerns here, and they are troubling, and I've sat back, analyzed all the comments, and have been watching everything that also has been going on over the last several months. I served in the Marine Corps for over 22 and a half years. I spent 5 years in and out of Afghanistan and Iraq straight, nonstop. Look at my military record. Just retired about 18 months ago, and I'm now working for the Department of State up in Springfield. I served in Marine Corps infantry units. I watched Marines die. I was there in Helmand Province on the Pakistan border. I saw the body bags being placed on the airplanes. I was there. I made it up to the top of the ranks in the Marine Corps. So I totally understand how everybody here feels. But after 22 and a half years of serving in the Marine Corps, and all the time I've spent with the Department of State as a Marine Security Guard, working at the embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan, and as I mentioned, in and out of Afghanistan and Iraq, one thing I know, I put my life on the line for everybody can have freedom of speech. And I have several of my friends tell me all the time, hey, Jermaine, how are you okay with this kneeling thing? I say, look, for what I've done and for where I have been, I will always stand for the flag and for the Pledge of Allegiance. But I put my life on the line, and my Marines died, and I was nearly blown up several times by IEDs on my last combat deployment in Afghanistan, where I'm with my Marines and I'm looking to the left and I'm telling my driver in our vehicle, stop. There's an IED 1 foot to the left of this vehicle, and we slowly moved forward, and we barely made it out. So I understand that. But again, I put my life on the line, and for 5 years straight in Afghanistan, I did that so everybody can have these great freedoms in the United States of America. That's what it's about. So we cannot pick and choose what is right and what is wrong for different people. Some people want to look at things and say, well, it's only right in this situation and it's only wrong in that situation. No, I deployed, I fought. A lot of people, some people in here are talking, they never served. So I hear you running your mouth, but you never served. So until you put my shoes on, me, the combat veteran, me, the retired Marine, who had to escort those body bags on the plane. Yeah, I heard what you're saying, but first put on my shoes and then get up here and start talking. I did that, and my fellow Marines, and I did that for everybody. Again, I will always stand for the flag and the Pledge of Allegiance. I know that's what my brothers expect, and I will do that for myself and them, but we cannot pick and choose what is right and what's wrong. I bled, and my guys bled for everybody. So we can't get up here and say, well, freedom of speech is good for this person, it's not for that person. And for my fellow veterans that are saying they're disrespecting the flag, I would look them face to face if I tell many of my fellow Marines and be like, you know, you're sad because you know we fought for everybody. So it's not disrespecting the flag. We fought for everybody to march. Look what happened in Charlottesville months ago. I fought for that to happen, for those guys to march through Charlottesville and do whatever they want to. I didn't knock those guys. You know what I said? I fought so they can do that. When the NFL guys started kneeling, you know what I said? I fought so they can do that. So whether it's the Nazis in Charlottesville or whether it's the NFL players that are kneeling, Jermaine Jenkins, I fought for both parties can do that. Right is right and wrong is wrong. We cannot pick and choose. All right? You all have a good evening.
Before you start, sir, just a reminder that each person is given the right to speak, so let's refrain from interrupting them.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Darrell Coleman. I live at 11907 Arbor Glen Drive, Fredericksburg, Virginia, in the Chancellor District. First, I find it ironic that I had to turn off of Jefferson Davis Highway to come here to discuss disrespecting the flag. That's really peculiar to me, really interesting. I'd like to say that no one has a patent. No one owns patriotism. We're all patriots. We all love this country. And in my opinion, there is no greater symbol of a love of this country than for someone to say, I've been oppressed against for 400 years. And instead of raising a gun and rebellion, what they're doing, I choose to peacefully protest because I feel like I need to hold this country accountable to the ideals that it stands for, the ideals that's written in the Constitution, the ideals that's written in the Declaration of Independence. There's nothing unpatriotic about that. And then we look back and we're sitting there and we understand that we're riding down a major thoroughfare that's named after a guy, and there's another school in this district that's named after another guy who led a war, who was on a battlefield shooting guns at that very flag. Our values are warped. We have no understanding of history, and we have no understanding of what's going on right now. And if you can't see that, then you're not in a position to teach these kids. Anybody who wants to find out what these kids are thinking or what they're feeling, talk to the kids. How many of us have talked to these kids? No one talks to these kids. We'll sit there and we'll look at their movements and we'll make judgments of them. And we'll assume what they're thinking, but no one has talked to these kids. Take the time out and listen to what they have to say. They know a lot more than you realize. And in this age of having access through the internet and having access worldwide, they know a lot more than most of us do. So I don't need 5 minutes. So I'm done right now. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else like to address the board?
Good evening. I'm Dr. Carl Bentley. I am a retired teacher. I am a member of Virginia Education Association, retired. I have recently moved to Spotsylvania County. I live in the Berkeley District at 3409 Overview Drive, Timberlake section. I love Spotsylvania County, and I moved down here because I have pastored a church in Caroline County for the past 33 years. I'd like to say that the purpose of the symbolic speech that is demonstrated by kneeling during the national anthem has nothing to do with disrespect for the flag, disrespect for the military, disrespect for the veterans, or even disrespect for our country. The purpose and the goal of the protest is to bring attention to the historical genocide of black boys. It's to bring attention to young black men who have been murdered in the streets of America. It's to bring attention to discrimination and inequity. It's to bring attention to subtle and covert racism that even happens in our classrooms by people who say, I'm not a racist. And it's also to demonstrate an anthem, or to demonstrate against an anthem whose third verse glorifies the killing of slaves. And kneeling is a form of reverence. Kneeling is a form of respect. It's not disrespectful to kneel. It's the highest form of respect that you can give, to take a knee, even as when a man wants to propose to marry a woman, he gets on his knees and asks for her hand in marriage. It shows submission, it shows respect, and it also shows humility to our Creator. If it were not for the fact that young men such as Amadou Diallo and Tamir Rice and Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown had been plowed down in the streets of America, these young people would not be demonstrating to bring attention to the fact that something needs to change. We cannot continue to allow ourselves to be oblivious to the fact that our young people indeed do know what's going on. And they, in their own way, will make a difference in the United States. They're not carrying guns. They're not bringing out weapons or weapons of mass destruction. They are simply falling on their knees in an effort to say, something's wrong. Please hear me. Thank you.
My name is Hansberry Harvey. I reside at 17 Rainier Lane, Fredericksburg, Virginia. I've been an educator for 40-some years. I'm still a coach. And I can remember when I was in school, we had a policy that kids could opt out of the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag. Every morning you had to get up and you had to say, Pledge allegiance to the flag. But you had a policy where the kids could opt out and not say the Pledge allegiance to the flag. We're talking about being disrespectful of the flag, which I don't think that is the cause. 2 years ago, I was in Florida, in a place called Marion, Florida, and I was profiled, pulled over. I looked in my window, had a police officer on my left with a gun, two behind me with a gun, and one on the right with a gun. This is what we are talking about. If we didn't have it any other way, we wouldn't bring attention to it. John Carlos, 1968 in the Olympics, was stripped of his medal because he stood with a glove with a black flag on his hand. Muhammad Ali was stripped of his rights because he would not go into service because of that. We're talking about the flag of the United States of America. But a Nazi could stand up with his hand like this here, and we don't say a word in the United States of America. These kids are not doing anything to hurt anyone. Only thing they're doing is bringing protests to their lives. Now, I have a grandson who is mixed. My only thing is that when a police officer get ready to pull him over, they're not going to look at him as a white man. They're going to look at him as a black kid where he may get killed. Thank you.
I'm not as eloquent as them, so I actually wrote some things down so that my brain stays on task. I actually have two things to talk about this evening. First, my name is Andrea Swope. I live on Sweetbriar Drive in the Battlefield District. Mr. Braswell, it's good to see you again. First, the easy thing. I'm here today to publicly express my gratitude to Miss Cassie Palmer. Ms. Palmer has been serving as the interim representative for the Lee Hill District. It's easy to be concerned, upset, and frustrated about things that happen in our community, but few people take personal risk to stand up and do something about it. She put herself, her beliefs, and her reputation under scrutiny. When there was nothing to gain but serving her constituents, she came forward, and she's done it with a level of integrity, honesty, and sincerity. In 5 short months, she has made an impact in this district, bettering it and modeling the best of our community leaders. It's easy to make generic statements and empty platitudes. It's another to put oneself into the community and into action. Ms. Palmer, I want to sincerely thank you for your representation. Your leadership, ethics, and morality will be greatly missed. And with that, so I don't run out of time, I'm going to pivot to the topic of the evening, students taking a knee. I could stand here and give you my biography, the spouse of a 22-year Marine Corps veteran, a Marine who served 4 combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that someone in my family has served in every military branch in every war since World War II. But I'm not going to talk about that or patriotism or the military because this has absolutely nothing to do with that. Simply put, taking a knee is an expression of the constitutionally protected right of religious freedom and freedom of speech. Not only has this been decided by our nation's Supreme Court in 1943, it was tested again in 1969. I quote Justice Fortas, "It can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. Requiring students to stand is unconstitutional, period. Isn't this kind of peaceful protest an essential part of what makes American democracy so exceptionally great? I know that my fellow citizens state that they are committed to the Constitution and what it stands for. Protecting the Second Amendment has been a specific topic of interest of late. Requiring students to stand is a restriction of their First Amendment rights, and if we say that we honor the Constitution, then we need to be willing to respect all aspects of it, even if it makes us uncomfortable. If we say we value limited government and the voice of the people, then we are in direct conflict to want the government to reach into the mouths and minds of its citizens. Every child within this district is entitled to exercise their constitutional rights peacefully without reprimand. Finally, 5 time, I find it frustrating, I have the word repugnant down here, but I don't know, that we are encouraging the restriction of constitutionally protected First Amendment rights, given that any action to require students to stand during the anthem has already been proven by the courts to be unconstitutional. I'm surprised that any citizen would put students, families, and the district in a position to use district funds and resources to defend what is an unwinnable position. Monies that could be used to support our teachers and students will instead have to be directed to argue what is an unconstitutional and un-American position. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to 12.02 board member comments, and we'll start with Mr. Braswell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually very happy to have an opportunity to respond, and please bear with me. I'm going to take a few moments. First of all, I want to address some of the speakers that discussed about the promptness of the board to respond to their inquiries. You can see my emails that were sent to constituents almost immediately upon their inquiry that I not only reached out to them, provided my telephone numbers so that we can speak or even make an arrangement to sit down and discuss it. Those attempts by me to affect that coordination were rebuffed. However, one of the particular speakers' husband did in fact acknowledge that I did reach out and try to close the gap with that particular constituent. And I don't want anyone to get the impression that if you contact the Spotsylvania County School Board, specifically Baron Braswell, that he's not going to get back to you. And not only will I provide my cell number, but I'll provide my home number or any other number that you need in order to have a conversation with me. All I ask is that you put your seatbelt on, because I'm going to give it to you. I saw in the newspaper with a great deal of interest another citizen that stated that they didn't hear from Spotsylvania County Schools. And I found that kind of interesting because I received an email from her thanking me for the conversation that I had with her. In fact, I looked on my phone today and I spoke with her for 15 minutes and 36 seconds about this particular issue. So I don't want anyone to leave here today thinking that this school board is not responsive to the inquiries of our citizens. I have the dates. Everything that I mentioned is foilable, so you can look on my my email and you can see all the email traffic. Now, I'm the only member on this board that is a honorably discharged veteran. By characterization of my service is honorable. I have several meritorious service medals, several Army Commendation medals, Expert Infantryman's badge. I was an infantry officer. And I have a National Defense Service Medal. I take the characterization of my service very seriously. It's evident my DD 214 speaks for it. But I know there's other service members out here that also gave of their time, and I appreciate their service as well. My concern is that there's a discussion that says that we didn't know what the students were protesting about. I have the firsthand knowledge of also being a volunteer coach with the Cortland football team. So I would have been delighted to share with anyone firsthand account of what was said and what occurred as a result of the kneeling. First of all, our principal and activity director did an excellent job of making sure that all the coaches understood that they could have conversations with the kids about the issue of kneeling, but at no way, in no fashion, were those children's constitutional rights be infringed. They were very clear about it. And because I volunteer as a coach, I've always been a volunteer coach, never received a penny for my service, except for maybe a few t-shirts every year. But I heard firsthand the head coach bring the kids into the end zone and share with him why he intended to stand. He asked another one of the coaches to come up and speak, and he as well encouraged and implored the young men to stand, but to stand for the reasons that America's still the best place going. And then finally, I had a chance to address them, and I shared with them that I intended to stand. I'm a veteran. I have friends that didn't come back home. But I also knew that my friends and we swore to defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Said nothing about the flag. It said that we would support and defend the Constitution. So, as much as I detest the Confederate flag and what it stands for, I believe that it stands as a symbol of hate. I believe that it's treasonous. I believe that the Confederate flag was a dividing force in America. Even though I strongly believe that, I believe that the person that's flying it over I-95 has the right to do it. I thought I put myself in harm's way so that they would be able to do that. I'm a Christian. I'm a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I believe that he is the truth, the way, and the life. There's no other way but through him. However, if somebody wants to practice the Muslim religion or not practice religion at all, that's what I fought for. That's their choice. That's what they get to do because they're Americans. I did not agree with the protest, like the other gentleman mentioned, that was going on in Charlottesville with KKK and Nazi sympathizers. But if they peacefully want to assemble, that's what this country has allowed for them to do. And that's what every service member that swore to support and defend the Constitution was calling for and giving their life for. So even though there's things I don't like, I recognize that the principles in which America has been formed is greater than us. Like I told the kids, it's the best thing popping. So that's why I stand, and even though I knew that some of them were kneeling, and I disagreed with it because I felt like they could use other methods to affect change. Lord knows we already have enough awareness. I would like to see some mentorship. I'd like to see some active engagement within the community to make changes in the fundamental lives of everybody that lives and works in this community. But what I wanted them to know is that even though they were kneeling, and I knew they were kneeling, I wasn't paying attention to them. I was looking up at the flag. And the flag was all furled out, getting its flap on. The flag, it reminded me of the fact that it was flapping like that during Vietnam. It was flapping during the Civil Rights Movement. It was flapping during voting rights. It was flapping during desegregation of our schools. And we're worried about kneeling. We're going to be okay. United States Constitution is the greatest, the forming of that Constitution was the greatest thing that has ever beset American society and life in this world. It says even though we're not perfect, we're working towards perfection. Even though in this country where we have majority rights, there's majority rules, there's minority rights. And so as a board member that actively served in our military, that volunteers his time as a coach, that loves the people of this community, I will never do anything that would interfere with their First Amendment rights to express themselves. Even though I don't like it. Even though I think there may be a better way to do it. Because as an American, that's what I chose to fight for.
Ms. Palmer.
So a couple thoughts. One is, and forgive me if I'm being a little bit redundant here, but on the communication issue, I received 4 written communications about the topic of kneeling. I responded immediately to 2 of them out of naivete and not really understanding how all this worked. I was delayed in my response to 2 others. I assumed since other board members had responded that it was addressed. And I did apologize in writing and do apologize tonight to those 2 individuals who did not receive a prompt response from me. The communication that I received, 3 out of 4 of them did specifically ask that, quote, something be done about or to these kids. And so the idea, I think it's wonderful that we've had an amazing conversation tonight about what this means to everybody, but the original question put before me as a board member was, what can we do about this? And so I would just like to reiterate that, as has been talked about tonight, this has pretty much been covered. The way the Supreme Court works is they pick and choose cases that can then be applied to other situations. And I don't think, as one speaker said, that we should be spending county resources to test something that has been well-tested, has been applied across the board to patriotic activities in general, not just the pledge and not just within the school building. I don't want to see us use those resources in that way. So I would be opposed to any policy that even tries to skirt around this and ask coaches or teachers, many of whom are volunteers, to fix this or to act on it. So that's just an important thing to me. I also want to say that I'm concerned about the assumption that I've been hearing that our staff and coaches and volunteers and leaders are not teaching kids about the flag, about veterans, about sacrifice. We do absolutely teach our students about history. The Veterans Day celebrations that we have are an extraordinary show, I think, of how important it is to individuals and students when their parents and uncles and grandparents come in for the day. You know, we have many teachable moments that we do teach about the amazing sacrifices that have been made for this country. So I do think that our staff are doing a good job with that. I believe it is painful for many to witness somebody kneeling during the anthem, and I do not discount that. I do not think that it is wrong to say that that hurts if it hurts you, and I applaud people who stand up and share that. The challenge for me is that I don't think that we get to say, this is not the right time for that, this is not the right place for that, it's protected speech. It is the right time, and it is the right place for those who are doing it. So my thought is, you know, we cannot require, so how can we inspire? And I received an email today touching on the teachable moment aspect of this, and I would like to sort of move that forward a little bit. Massaponax High School every year has a football game that honors Corporal Ryan McGee, who was killed in action. And one of the things they do is they invite his mother. She is a Gold Star mother, and she is given the opportunity to speak to the boys in the locker room after their practice the day before the game, so that they know that that game is not about red, white, and blue face paint or the balloon release that happens afterwards, that they understand in their hearts the sacrifice that was made by someone who walked the halls of Massaponax ahead of them. So I think there are things we can do to inspire. And I do think the most inspirational thing we can do is to accept that these kids have something to say. And I would like to personally, for the next 6 weeks or so that I'm on the board, make myself available. If there are students who have concerns about justice in the halls of our schools, please reach out to me. And then beyond that, I would love to stay involved and hear directly from these kids what it is they're concerned about, especially as it relates to our schools. I think this is an extraordinary opportunity, and I thank everyone who came out to speak tonight to share how they felt about it. I think it is absolutely essential that we have these conversations. So thank you all.
Anybody else at that end? Mr. Blaine, do you have something?
We as board members have to concentrate on one question, and that is, what is good for kids? That's our guiding light when we make decisions. I have to tell you that I appreciate so much the comments that I've heard this evening. I've never been in a position to have a police officer stop me for any reason, unless if I was driving too fast, or in Canada when I was stopped. And they don't quite operate the same way in Canada as we do in the United States. But the story of the man, and thank you, sir, for taking time to tell us about your experience in Florida. And those of us, most of us, I think, who are white, do not really appreciate what discrimination is. And this comes out very strongly. I second everything that my colleague Baron Braswell said, frankly. But as we work focusing on children, you have to remember that one of the things our schools teach is what it means to be an American, and what the Constitution is, what it means, and it means what it says, and the Supreme Court interprets that and helps us understand. And the answer to the question on the table this evening is very clear. The school board has only one option relative to kneeling or not kneeling. I'm in agreement with that regardless, but we have to act as adults in the way that we're teaching our children is the right way to act. And to ask the school people to go against what the Constitution says doesn't make any sense to me. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone here who made a statement this evening. It's instructional for all of us and appreciated, I know. Thank you.
Ms. Shelley.
Thank you. Well, first I want to just start off with, it is American Education Week, so I want to celebrate everyone in the school system. Thank you for everything you do. This week is for you. So I did want to start off with that. And then I want to thank our speakers up here. I want to thank all this for what our board member said. I want to thank the speakers from the audience for what you said. We have, it's a discussion, it's a conversation, and that's a good thing. I have been profiled myself. I am an Arab American, and I have been profiled myself at an airport right after 9/11. I know it's different than my African American friends, but I have as well, so I know that feeling. But what I do know too is I am an American. And all of us on this board, when we took our oath to be a board member, we also took an oath to support and defend the Constitution. And our First Amendment is freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and I know I'm missing one. But we have those freedoms. And the students who kneel, I don't agree with it because I stand. But that is their right. They have a First Amendment right to protest, for speech, and it all goes together. Freedom of petition, I think that's the one I left out. They have that right. One of our speakers mentioned Tinker versus Des Moines, the case. And she did say, this was what the Supreme Court Justice said, as she said, it can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. Our students do not, once they step over that threshold into a school, they're not shedding their rights. They still get those First Amendment rights, their Second Amendment rights, every one of their rights. I mean, Fourth Amendment, search and seizure. We can't search a student without probable cause. Same thing. These are their rights. Our Constitution says that. And we're going to defend it. That's what we do. And our students are getting the instruction. I have taught U.S. history in the past. I have taught civics. The Virginia standards. So I know that those are being taught. And we have conversations. And I truly, truly appreciate everyone coming out. Both sides of everybody having to say something. And I received one email, I should say I received 2 emails from a husband and a wife, and I only responded back to one of them because I thought that the other person that would have been shared. So I apologize in that I did not answer both of those emails. And that was questioning the discretion of the coaches. But I also received another email today from a constituent who who was a veteran, and who says it is absolutely the students' rights to take a knee because he fought for that right for our students and for all Americans. Thank you.
Dr. Meyer.
Just as closing, and I did answer 1 or 2 emails that regard this, and my response was that this is a teachable moment because we can't regulate how students are supposed to think. It's an educational moment, it's a teaching moment. And I'm really thankful for the time that Mr. Braswell took to explain how the principal and the coaches and the AD took time to talk with the students, to explain to them a teachable moment. It's interesting if anyone's ever lived overseas in another country and experienced a different culture, when I spent 12 years, you take on an image as a gringo. There's no way you're going to escape that image. I don't care what you do, you're still a gringo. And you're kind of a fish out of water, no matter how well you learn the language or learn the culture, learn the expressions, can speak it, write it, read it, you're still a gringo. And you take on that persona that comes with it, and you have a chance to appreciate there are benefits to that, but there are also detriments to it. You can understand and see how others perceive you and take on profiling. You can also see the freedoms that we take for granted. The very first day I went to a university to go to school, walking down the street, I walked in front of the Fifth Army. And there stands the people on the streets with machine guns, directing traffic, machine guns. The machine guns were all over the place. We talk about instilling fear, and remember at that time it was a dictatorship. So you could not write or say anything because someone was always looking over your shoulder and could comment something to the Fifth Army and say, this gentleman, and I had friends who were taken in because someone denounced them. We really don't appreciate the freedoms that we have until you step outside your country and experience another country. Then you come back here and see, what do we really have? And I have brothers, twin brother, and a younger brother, both who served Vietnam. The younger one, 3 tours. And my twin, I went to be in the ministry overseas and he went into the Navy. The freedom, he fought to have the freedoms that we enjoy. And I was able to learn how to appreciate the freedoms that we have when you experience a different culture and the restrictions that are imposed by a different culture. Now, true, a lot of that has changed over the 30, 40 years now. But when you experience and then come back to this country, you truly do gain an appreciation. And I'm very sure that many of our service people who have gone to other countries and have worked in those countries can then understand and come back and say, wow, the freedom that they fought for, my twin brother, my younger brother, and my uncles, who fought for the freedoms that we can enjoy. It gets back to, there's why we have to have that teachable moment. Because with freedom comes a responsibility. So when someone is going to act in a protest manner, they take on the responsibility for their actions to explain and defend what they're doing and why they're doing it so that it becomes understandable. And that's why it's a teaching moment. I don't agree with it, as Mr. Braswell, said very clearly, but at the same time, I do have to respect that someone has a different approach, a different reason, but they take on that responsibility for any time they want to do something differently. That comes with the territory of having freedom. So with that, I yield my time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Blaine has a follow-up.
The 1943 Supreme Court decision was mentioned a couple of times, and I thought you'd be interested in a sentence from that. The majority opinion contains this statement: if there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, or force citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein. If there are any circumstances which permit such an exception, they do not now occur to us. And that's right straight from that statement. Thank you for letting me add.
I would like to comment on a couple of those things. First were some claims earlier this evening, as well as in letters, that the school board was not responding. As far as I received the 2 emails, as well as most of the board, but we also sometimes blind copy each other to read the responses so that we know what each other says. Well, we are one board and we can operate as one decision, so each individual opinions don't matter. It's what the final vote would be. And since we're all educated, most of us are educated on what the law is and have no intentions of setting any policy that goes against the law. If that is relayed to somebody once or twice, I don't see the need for it to be relayed 6 or 7 times. We're all acting as one board and we share the same idea as far as that goes. As far as our administration and the school staff, they also all reached out to those individuals. They offered to meet, offered to have phone conversations, and all of those offers were denied. As far as one of the claims in the paper, as Mr. Braswell pointed out, I'm fully aware that he had contacted the individual. There was a phone conversation and a thank you note, which was shared with us all. So again, we are shocked that that is being said. I, and along with other board members, did see fit that Mr. Braswell was one of the first people to respond back to these, because he was firsthand involved and there, and the people were in his district. So therefore, he would be the prime person and prime point of contact on that, and he took care of that, as he has mentioned. So I just wanted to point out that as far as our standard policy goes, everything was addressed in a timely manner. Not only, as we've mentioned, the Supreme Court decisions, it's also in state code and our school board policy. And like many of our policies, they're all mandated from higher up, and we just write policy that reflects the law. So that, again, doesn't matter any of our personal decisions on this matter or personal feelings on this matter whatsoever. The law states what the law states. So whether we agree or disagree with it, our opinion doesn't matter. We're not going to change that. And I just wanted to read this, which was written October 26th by Justice Liddington, who is on the U.S. Supreme Court of Appeals. And she said, although it cannot be said that the law on student speech is settled, a review of the applicable case law precedent supports the conclusion that students should not be punished for protesting the national anthem by kneeling at high school football games. In 1943 case, the West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a school would violate the free speech rights of students who were Jehovah's Witnesses if it forced them to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Justice Robert Jackson's words set out in majority opinion are of particular importance today. To believe that patriotism will not flourish if patriotic ceremonies are voluntary and spontaneous instead of a compulsory routine is to make an unflattering estimate of the appeal of our institutions to free minds. It follows that a school's authority to discipline students for silent anthem protests is not increased if students are taking part in a privilege not granted to all students, such as being members of an athletic team or club. This is because the courts have held that public institutions cannot withhold privileges, like employment at a public agency, if employment exercised free speech rights, like refusing to recite an anti-communist pledge. In its 1969 decision in Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School District, the Supreme Court established the standard still used today to decide whether student speech at school is protected by the Constitution. And a Tinker High School student was suspended for wearing a black armband to school to protest the Vietnam War and to promote peace. In its decision, the Supreme Court made clear that the children do not shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate, as long as their words or actions do not substantially disrupt the learning environment. Courts still use the Tinker standard disruption of learning environment to decide whether a student's speech is protected by the Constitution. After the first game that we were alerted that students had knelt, we were already discussing what would happen if we received contact about it. We had already consulted with our attorneys, all of them, to make sure there wasn't anything that were not educated on. And the whole board was briefed by Tuesday following that Friday game. We've been on top of this the entire time, knew what the students' rights were, knew what our responsibilities as a board was, and we've been very proactive in this whole matter. On the contrary, there was actions at a previous board that were not as informed. They made statements that were not within our rights as a school board and were encouraging us to do things that we just are not able to do by the law. We've been on top of this, we're educated on this topic, and we've behaved exactly as we should have, and I applaud our board for being on top of things and fully informed this whole time. And with that, I have been asked for a short recess. Is everybody okay with that? All those in favor of recess? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1. By Dr. Myers, second by Mr. Braswell. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0 to return to open session, and we will start with 13.01 Board Committee Reports. Does anybody have a Board Committee report? Dr. Meyer?
Just one quick thing in terms of this morning I attended an ABTEL meeting, a teacher licensure meeting, and one of the reports that was given was an update on teacher shortages. I'll make a copy of that and share with Dr. Baker and can share with the rest of the board members that information because it was very pertinent to the dilemma that Virginia is in in that we have a teacher, truly have a teacher shortage in many of the critical areas. Thank you.
Ms. Shelley?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I attended the Spotsylvania, the Special Education Advisory Committee and meeting last couple weeks ago. They had someone coming in from the State Department of Education that just talked about the roles of the SEAC, and that our SEAC will be putting together some updated bylaws for their committee. And then I also have sitting up here a card, so I just want to let everyone know that the next meeting will be November 30th, then December 14th, January 25th, February 22nd, March 22nd, April 26th, May 24th, and June 14th, and they're all at Cortland Elementary School in the library, and they start at 6:30. Thank you.
Any more board committee reports? 13.02, activity bus update. Mr. Wolf and Mr. Forrest.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Baker and Dr. Martin. This evening, what we would like to do is just provide the board with an update on the status of the activity bus pilot that's taking place at Spotsylvania High School and Post Oak Middle School. So I have Kenny Forrest up here with me, the Director of Transportation, and also I'll have Dr. Hester and Mr. Baleko from Post Oak and Spotsylvania High School, should there be any questions specifically for them at the end of this presentation. So just a few reminders of how we started. So the activity bus pilot began on September 5th at both Spotsylvania High School and Post Oak Middle School. Activity buses are available for any Post Oak Middle School and Spotsylvania High School student who participates in an organized and supervised sponsored activity that requires the student's attendance beyond the regular instructional day. There are 3 activity buses that operate Monday through Thursday, and their departure times are listed there at 5:15 and 5:30. There are 4 designated drop-off points for each activity bus. You can see those there for Activity Bus 1, Activity Bus 2, and Activity Bus 3. Communication from the schools. Automated calls were sent via school messenger at the start of the school year. Emails were sent with all the attachments via school messenger. A hard copy of all documentation was sent home with every student during business night at Post Oak Middle School. All clubs, teams, and remediation candidates have received or will receive a hard copy of the forms during the start of each season and/or activity. Activity bus information is present in the weekly Sunday Patriot Post from Post Oak and Sunday night update from Spotsylvania High School. It's advertised at each athletic fee night, and all the information is posted on the front page of both school websites. So, some statistics to date. So, submitted permission slips as of October 13th. We have had 2 meetings thus far, so that's our last meeting was October 13th, and Post Oak has had 54 permission slips that were submitted by that date, and Spotsylvania High School 65 permission slips. These are the things that students have turned in with the intent, should they ever need to stay after school, to be able to ride the activity bus, that the permission slip is on file. Ridership. We had our first meeting to go ahead and talk about the activity bus and how the pilot's going thus far as of on September 27th. Post Oak, the lowest number of students who rode the buses during that time were 4, and Spotsylvania High School also 4 students. And then the highest number, the highest activity, Post Oak had 14 and 19 at Spotsylvania High School. So the average ridership between both schools, Post Oak had 10 students, Spotsylvania High School had 12, for a total of 22 students utilizing those 3 buses during that first part for our first meeting. As of October 31st, Kenny updated these numbers prior to this board meeting that we had at the end of October, and you can see that the lowest number of students who rode the activity bus from Post Oak is 1, and Spotsylvania High School was 2. With the highest number being of 20 students from Post Oak and 19 from Spotsylvania High School. So you see the average ridership between both schools. Post Oak was 9, Spotsy 11, for a total of 20 students accessing those 3 buses. So pilot positives. By and large, students have had their parents or guardians at the designated stops for pickup, providing opportunity for some students to get remediation and a ride home. Bus drivers and aides have been very positive and active in their role. They spend more time to make sure that a parent was at the pickup zone. So if they needed to, they spend a little bit more time. And on occasion, a bus driver would complete rounds and revisit a hub drop-off location to make sure a student has had a chance to catch up with a parent. So a student may be on their cell phone hearing from their parent, they're not at the stop as of yet. The bus would continue on the route and then come back to that stop to go ahead and meet up with the parent. Bus drivers have been there on time and no substitutes. And kids have been picked up every afternoon and no bus has had to come back to the school. And as an administrator, that's what you want. Pilot concerns. Some logistics of loading the buses at first, so Spotsylvania High School has worked that out. And then the lack of ridership at this point, as you can see from the data that was shared, but this may change with winter and spring sports and SOL and quarterly remediation. So at this time, if there happens to be any questions from the board that either myself, Mr. Forrest, or Dr. Hester or Mr. Blako could answer, we'd be happy to go ahead and do that.
Mr. Braswell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a couple comments. I had an opportunity to speak to the activity director of Spotsylvania High School at the Spotsylvania-Cortland game, and we engaged in a really interesting conversation about the activity buses and the fact that the activity buses kind of came on a little bit later in the year, at the beginning of the year, after the football players had already established transportation requirements and requirement needs, and that it didn't have an opportunity to pick up initially this first go-round. And I'm going to be curious to see how the spring and winter sports look, and next year, once the kids know for a fact that, yeah, the activity buses are there and they're reliable, they're going to get me to where I need to go, I think we'll see ridership go up quite a bit.
I would agree. And our hope is to give periodic updates to the board throughout this year so you're aware of what that ridership looks like.
Right. And I made that, when I had the conversation with the activity director, I think I'm saying the correct thing. I'd be curious to hear Dr. Hester's insight on that as well, if she wouldn't mind.
Insight into whether or not the increase in ridership for the spring and the winter? Is that
No, just the fact that the ridership was down initially because of when the activity buses came on board in comparison to when football actually starts.
Well, I think that has a pretty good insight into when you start 4 weeks later. Kids have already gotten their transportation figured out, and also it started. We at the high school level, kids kind of get conditioned to know that this is the start time. If I'm not there, I might not have an opportunity to participate. So it's a decision-making point for them that I will be there on the first day or I won't. So I think that does provide a good reason. We did have the fortune that once school started, that we offered the opportunity for student athletes to join the team. So once the first day of school came around, if you didn't start out a month ago, you will have an opportunity to join us. Obviously, supporting the VHSL standards of practice and time invested. But that was offered because there is a recognition that in our community, we might have some students that didn't have the opportunity to take advantage of participation due to transportation issues. And we didn't want to eliminate a man or woman for participating in an activity without that chance. In terms of the winter, due to court space and other confines, that we might have a second practice taking place maybe from 5 to 7. So we might miss out on those, but we have a rotation. So we still will have some student athletes being able to take advantage even within the winter. And then in the spring, I think that's really where we're going to see the advantages of the activity bus come to fruition, and that you're going to have a lot more student athletes participating in track and in other sports, that you're going to have more bodies, and the time frame will be more advantageous for them to take advantage of that. And then also starting about April, maybe March, the remediation process. We already have kids taking advantage of the athletic buses due to remediation and SOL preps and retesting. So we do see that, but I really will be interested to see how many kids take advantage of that come springtime.
Thank you, Dr. Hester. Now, last question, when she mentioned something that I wanted to make sure there was a way for us to capture those that are riding the bus for athletic purposes and those that are riding the bus for remediation. If there's a way to capture that.
We can try to capture that for the next update for the board.
Dr. Meyer.
No, I think what Mr. Braswell just mentioned and what was just mentioned by the principal at Spotsy High, that, they are now beginning to see some of the work in remediation, and I'm hoping that also applies to the middle school. So if we can capture that data as to how ridership, not only for activity, for athletics, but also for, tutoring or remediation.
Can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Blaine?
I wonder whether any students recognize that they will have Wi-Fi available to them if they're coming from a home where there is none, and that might be an opportunity for them to stay at school. And is the library available, I'm assuming?
Is the library available for the students? That'd be great.
Sorry about that. Yes, the library can be available. It has not been requested yet, but it is something that if that's what we have our students or our student athletes wanting, and I don't want to just make it one-sided, this is to all of our students, not just athletes or theater members, but all of our students. So if that's something that they are interested in doing, we can make that accessible. It just hasn't been requested yet.
I'm assuming the bus is available to any student now, is that not?
It's available to any student being supervised in some capacity. So, for instance, a student staying after to want to watch a game, no, because we do have that supervisory responsibility. So that's why we keep referencing the remediation. We have teachers that will stay after school with our students. And so we also have teachers that volunteer, like, look, I know your remediation might only take an hour, hour and a half, but that bus is not going to come until, we won't release you until 5:20. So we have teachers and other staff that are willing to stay with the students until that release time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, it takes time for people to learn, so.
Sure, yeah, anything, it takes a little bit of time to kind of get traction, and that's what we're working through and consistently trying to promote it.
Any other questions for the group? Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
And we can move on to 13.03, Bright Futures USA. Dr. Baker, Mrs. Fennard, and Ms. Dale.
Go ahead and put the presentation on.
Yes.
That helps. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. It's my pleasure tonight to provide some opening comments and a context for the Bright Futures program. Since I started as superintendent 5 years ago, and especially the last 4 years, our strategic plan has been focused in 3 areas, and really the core foundation of all of that is our community engagement and building of community partnerships so that we have greater capacity to meet increasingly complex and demanding issues that our students are faced with. And though we have built and also inherited many structures that enable us to meet a variety of student needs through our schools, not the least of which are the teaching and learning needs, we also have the social emotional needs, we have mental health needs, we have students in poverty, and as a foundation, I think we have many great things. But one of my goals has been, how can we, and I was reminded of this today, incidentally, that superintendents and school boards come and go, but that the community is always going to be here. And how do we build capacity so that when we are not here, that there are leadership structures, particularly those within our community, that can help us to meet all of the various needs that our young people and our youth need. So this evening, we together are going to share information about how Bright Futures can help build community partnerships with our schools to benefit students, staff, and the entire community. So this slide gives you just a couple of bits of information regarding what Bright Futures involves, but to give you a little more information, it's a community-based nonprofit organization whose vision statement is inspiring community partnerships that open a way for all children to learn, lead, and serve to their full potential now and in the future. Should sound familiar in terms of alignment with our own mission and vision as a school division. Interestingly enough, it is not a school program. It is a community-based organization that partners with the school division to help students be successful and have their basic needs met. The Bright Futures program was born in Joplin, Missouri in 2011. And at that time, the school board in Joplin had hired a new superintendent. His name was and is C.J. Huff. And they tasked him with addressing a variety of needs after the place, Joplin, had been ravaged by some natural disasters, as well as having significant poverty issues, and they wanted to see some things improve, particularly things such as their graduation rate and their 25% dropout rate at that time. They wanted to see that go way down. And so, like so many communities across the country, they were struggling with how do we meet the needs of students in poverty, as well as get more parent involvement, because they were struggling that. And though that's common, they were seeing that many of their teachers were spending much of their own time trying to address those needs in isolation. And I know you've also heard stories like that from some of our teachers in schools. So the superintendent at that time quickly determined that in order to meet the strategic goal of graduating more Joplin students, the basic needs of students would have to be met. So he worked to engage the community in its schools and developed a program that enabled existing community resources to come together. And you'll hear later from both Ms. Flenard and from Ms. Daniels that we feel as though we're poised to be able to consider this program because of the many pieces that we have, but how do we bring those pieces together so that not only can we efficiently and effectively meet many student needs that are related to their ability to learn in school, but meet them quickly and meet them through a streamlined process with our community. Due to the success of Bright Futures program in Joplin, you can see that there are many other affiliates that have developed throughout the country, including Virginia. So I'm going to come back to noting that this is not a program. What you see here is a framework, and it consists of 3 components that are referred to as entry points for community engagement. I always try to applaud not only Ms. Daniels, but our entire staff, as well as this school board, for the proactive way in which we continue to try to engage our community in the work that we do on their behalf each day. But at the core of this work is the opportunity to create synergy in the community, which generates perpetual momentum through collective impact of resources in a community on a specific need. And those needs can be a number of things, but to be able to immediately, with an established structure, say this is a need that we have in our schools, and have community leaders and a body of folks work efficiently and effectively to help us meet those needs, again, effectively and on demand. Since this is a framework, the process is determined at the local level within the framework, depending on the needs, resources, relationships, and leadership of the community. So this framework, we can, if the board chooses to adopt this and approve it, we can fine-tune this framework to meet our unique needs here in Spotsylvania County Public Schools. And one common question that we tend to hear about whenever we're looking at a framework like this, again, not a program, is why can't we just do this ourselves without affiliating with some other program? You know, this sounds like something that we already kind of do, and can't we just, do it the same or better? The answer is yes, but what you do lose is the networking opportunities with other communities and the training and support that comes from Bright Futures USA. Probably the best way to describe it is when you have something that's an established success and it's been adopted in many different places in many different ways and continues to produce exemplary results, it certainly behooves us to consider why don't we adopt that and utilize the resources to hit the ground running rather than trying to use what we already have in terms of limited resources to try to develop it completely ourselves. And so just to give you an idea, as Joplin, Missouri, as sort of a case study, you can see the various positive results that they believe Bright Futures helped them to achieve over time. For us, we have built our community partnerships substantially. The question is, how do those partnerships and business partners that we have, how do they work in concert to meet the needs that are indicated in our strategic plan? And I think they do a great job, but we believe, again, if we were to adopt this framework, utilize the training, and put together a committee based on these structures, that we will be able to go much further in that area. And I'll now turn it over to Ms. Flanard.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. And I believe, as the board does, that Spotsylvania County Public Schools is an outstanding school division. And we certainly don't have the needs as great as Joplin had or experienced at that time. But I do believe that we can do better for our students. And this slide just represents some of the areas of need that we are experiencing in our school division. And I also know that as a community, we can come together to do more and to do better for our students. Some of our economic challenges are listed on this slide, and as poised this evening, Michelle Swisher received the award on behalf of Spotsylvania County Schools for our work with our homeless students. And you can see that last year, at the end of the school year, we had 601 students that were identified as McKinney-Vento. And at the beginning of this school year, we already started the school year with 214. And just at the beginning of October, that number has already gone up to 255. I know that if I look today, it would be higher than 255. So it does continue to rise, and it does continue to be an area of need. And when you look at our continued increases in the number of students receiving free and reduced lunch, you can also see that that number is on the rise as well. October 1st, 2017 is slightly lower than it has been in the past couple of years, but it is certainly something that I too anticipate going higher as well. So this past March, in 2017, Ms. Daniels and I had an opportunity to go to a regional Bright Futures event. And at that event, we had an opportunity to speak with other school divisions that were utilizing the organization Bright Futures and really learn more about their structures and how they can really provide that framework that Dr. Baker was mentioning. And we do feel that it is the communities that are using it, it is a powerful way that we can create a wraparound support services for our students, that when we see a need, we can be better equipped to immediately respond to our students' needs. And Ms. Daniels is going to talk a little bit about how we have the potential of a steering committee that has been formed.
Okay, good evening. What I want to just share with you is that we've created a potential steering committee, and it's based on different individuals throughout our community, and they are faith-based organizations, community leaders, and business and organization representatives. So what we're going to do is we'd like to invite these individuals to join this framework, and our role will be as advisors. Dr. Baker will be an advisor, Mrs. Flanard and I will be advisors, and it's really about them coordinating the effort for our division. So why are we poised to go with this approach? As Dr. Baker said earlier, our Partners in Education program has been around for about 7 years, and we have over 300 business partners. Our efforts of our school social workers is phenomenal. We have a foundation that's been in place for 10 years. We have the Spotsylvania Education Association in place. It's very supportive of both students and staff. We also have a new organization that we've been working with, which is the Teen Enrichment Network, which is doing phenomenal things in our community, as well as those other existing relationships with nonprofit organizations such as Smart Beginnings and United Way.
Just want to, before Ms. Daniels goes to the timeline and really opens it up to the school board for any additional questions that you may have, I wanted to address a couple of things that may come up in questions. One is, how would we go about trying to select individuals for, when you consider the size of our county and the number of partners that we have, how would we look to make those selections? Well, we're certainly going to look for diversity among those folks. We certainly would want a familiarity with some of their work and their desire to be a partner. And we're certainly not going to go try to find folks that don't necessarily have the time or right now the interest or availability, but certainly we would have had some exposure to their desire to work with the school division in the past. And we want it to make up a diverse group because that is our school division, that's our students, and that's our community. And so that way we have that representation. Also, we have folks every single day that are coming into our schools and helping. And it's frequent that we hear, what more can I do? Or just let us know what else we can do. And so to be able to empower folks who have that desire to be able to lead from a community perspective, again, something that will be enduring beyond our tenures and continue to bear fruit over hopefully decades, I think is exciting to folks, even if their time on that committee is only for a short period, but it is to build that capacity. The other thing that Ms. Daniels was talking about in terms of the various things that we have, and I know that it was brought up recently about our school social workers' efforts. We have some tremendous partners that are already making things happen, and you can see from the slide, we actually are involved with the Teen Enrichment Network that has a summit this coming Saturday at Salem Fields Church that is about a celebration of the arts. And eventually, that group is going to be, how can we help our community deal with mental health issues that are exploding, not only in our community, but throughout the nation. And so to be able to have all of these partners and all of these structures be able to be streamlined into a structure that can make sure that every child receives what they want. I'll use the example I've often used with our staff of mentorship. We have folks who come into our schools every single day now and provide mentoring opportunities. I know Mr. Braswell was talking about how he has helped with that within his role as a volunteer coach. But what about a school that just doesn't have the fortune, or the match hasn't been made? How do we ensure that there is equity of the distribution of those resources? So we're real excited about taking what is already good and being able to connect it with something that, again, will be able to be systemic over time.
Okay. So with that, we want to kind of let you know what the timeline looks like. Obviously, we're here tonight to talk to you a little bit about the framework. Once you guys approve it, if you decide to move forward with it, then we would in turn send out the invites to all the potential steering committee members, which right now we've got about 19 people we're considering for the steering committee. In December, we'll do a kickoff meeting for the steering committee. And then in January and February, Bright Future staff will actually come in and do the training for the steering committee. And then in March, we would attend the conference. And then in May, the steering committee would actually present to the principal. So instead of staff presenting, it will actually be those individuals that have agreed to become part of this joint venture with us. So in next steps, we believe that Bright Futures will be a great benefit to Spotsylvania County Public Schools, will help students and families in our community, and if additional community partnerships can be formed to address the basic needs of students, provide positive mentors, tutors, etc., and teachers and other school staff members will be able to direct more of their attention to teaching and learning. And tonight, we would like the board to consider formally endorsing the Bright Futures program. And such an endorsement would clear the way for Bright Futures Steering Committee to sign an affiliate agreement with Bright Futures USA, which is an action item that you'll be addressing a little bit later. And once it's formalized, then we can move forward, and the local Bright Futures Committee will be receiving training from the Bright Futures staff and further development of the organization and infrastructure at the local level. So the kickoff meeting will be later this year, as we said, and we'll begin creating community partnerships to benefit our schools and sharing time, talent, and treasure. And in conclusion, Bright Futures provides a path of communities to engage everyone in a collective movement to develop relationships and channel resources supporting education and enabling children to achieve success. We respectfully ask for your support as we work to establish Bright Futures in Spotsylvania County. So at this time, we'll entertain any questions you may have about this framework.
Ms. Shelley. I just have a comment. I thank you, Dr. Baker, ladies, for bringing this to us. I remember probably 2 or 3 years ago being at a conference, a VSBA conference, and this was presented. Dr. Sovine presented this from his school division, and I remember going and saying, we need to do this. So I am thrilled that this is coming to us this evening. You're going to have my full support. Thank you.
Dr. Meyer.
Likewise, ditto on the comments by Ms. Shelley. Question on the fee, is that an annual fee or is that a one-time?
It's a one-time fee.
One time.
Yes, sir.
I didn't know because is the training reoccurring or how does that, because people may change and follow-ups. I didn't know how that would happen.
Yeah, I think that certainly you want folks initially who would make up the steering committee, even though they're not going to sign their life away in a contract, that they are going to want to be leaders for at least, you would think, a few years. And they're going to have, we hope, the capacity to be able to train future leaders. So if someone has to step off the steering committee, they would then be able to help train the next person who would come in and fill that slot.
Thanks.
CT&E, we're often looking for employers who can provide an internship for kids, and I could see that this probably would have a lot of contacts that would enable that, but is not a basic objective, or does it exist there?
So basically, we're going to take the needs of what our principals are looking for and the student needs within their school, and then from there formulate how we're going to move forward. So if that is expressed by the principal as being a need in their school, then that's what the steering committee will work towards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that some of that is going to be, we're going to go in with some, pervasive needs that we have right now. But I think that was a great example, Mr. Blaine, of something that if we find, I think I heard this example, and it may have been from the founder, Dr. Huff, who said, it got to be that after a while, if something arose, I would just go to the steering committee and I would say, we need this. And we don't have the budget capacity, but it's an emerging need. And he said the committee got so that, okay, and that would be their project and they would get it. And an example for us is we want to develop, we use the acronym ASPIRE for our mentorship program, and we want to be able to train folks and have them going into schools and being mentors. First, we're trying to find out really what are the specific needs we have at each of our schools. But then we're going to need folks to help us get people in. So that committee would be a force potentially to help recruit and mobilize a volunteer, mentoring team.
From the employer standpoint, very likely a company would say, I know I have certain needs. Maybe if I volunteer, I'm going to identify some kids that I can kind of recruit. I mean, it's a two-way street. Yeah.
Mr. Braswell.
I also want to offer laudatory comments in regards to the Bright Futures. I think the idea of using mentorship as a multiplier is really going to be the difference of elevating this division to the next level. It's those things that we do where we reach down that are going to bring everyone else up. So I really like that, and I think on mentorship we have to do some serious vetting about who is actually going to be in certain schools. I jokingly tell people that my skill set as a mentor is not transferable to other schools. It's just not. So you kind of have to have like a matchmakers.com, if you will, to make sure you have the right person in the right place. Now, I met my wife at church now, so I just heard about matchmakers.com. But you know, we need to operate in that capacity where we can marry the two up so that we put the right people in the right place. Thank you.
Ms. Palmer?
Just a couple quick questions. Early in the presentation, there was a slide about meeting basic needs. And I think also on that same slide, there was reference in Joplin at least to raising funds. So if this is a framework that may not necessarily be how we end up using it, but can you just talk for a minute about what basic needs means in the context of Bright Futures? Because I think of basic needs as shelter, food, clothing, and also what implications this could have if funds are raised and then administered by the schools. Is there any element of that that's direct assistance to families, and have you thought about how that would work?
I'm just going to start with, I think you outlined very well, you went down a list, and those are basic needs. I think sometimes we're surprised when we learn that there is a child without those, given that list of whether it's the Treasure House or all of the different things that we have that are available. You also know that recently through Rover, we've been trying to get out into communities and deliver supplies. But to increase our capacity means that someone is on that when we can't be. So there's this idea that the folks that are working with the Treasure House, that's just one small aspect of the job that they do every single day. And so in the midst of all the other things, to have the community making sure that all of our almost 24,000 students have those basic needs, to me is really no small thing, even though we feel like we're doing a pretty good job of responding to those. Sometimes it's taking that next step and reaching out and saying, do you have, before we find out that they already don't. The other thing that I know we're trying to do, even with our work with the Teen Enrichment Network, is to connect people with the resources that we have, not only in our schools, but with the community. So whether it's nonprofits or whether it's our various service agencies, we want to make sure that people know that they have a number of different places to go, depending on what the difficulty is that they find themselves in. And so it's really enhancing and increasing our outreach to families, rather than them having to come when something's offered. So we feel like this for us, that's one way I would really like us to take advantage of the framework, is to have folks that are invested in going out, and we will certainly share as advisors. These are things that we perceive we need. We'll have the schools involved in that, but it's going to take special people who really have that hunger to make sure that nobody's hungry, for example. So.
Thank you for that. I commented at the Rock Out Knockout event that the thing that I love about it is that I do believe that there are needs within our community that the schools can help to meet, but that's not a two-step process. It's the community has needs, the schools can play a role in filling those, but we have to turn back to the community and other parts of it to fulfill those needs. So I think anything that really streamlines connections and identifies resources is very important. But being in this business, I know how limited the resources are, and the social work team knows how limited the resources are. So I think the dream is that we can then elevate the community's responsiveness to the needs in general. And that's a long-term goal. That's not going to happen right away, but I think $3,000 is a small investment to make towards that goal.
And one of the things I just want to mention is when we pay that one-time fee, what it does for us is, because this is a national organization, that corporate businesses will go to their corporate, and then they'll disperse information and resources to us. So if, for instance, let's just say Walmart has a whole bunch of water that they want to distribute, they could contact Bright Futures corporate, and then they will in turn contact all the Bright Futures communities and then we'll get the resources that way. So again, another way that we're strengthening our resource capability and able to get that stuff to our families and our own community. The other thing that I didn't mention earlier is that this also allows us, they support a Facebook page and website specifically for us that is connected to the corporate page. So when people are going to their corporate page, they're also going to be seeing our needs. And so we'll be able to put what our students' needs are, what we're looking for. And so people are going to see that nationwide, which is going to be very interesting, and I think also help build and further strengthen business partnerships and support for us.
Any more questions? Thank you. Oh, are you guys back? 14.01. Approval of Spotsylvania County Public Schools to become a Bright Futures affiliate.
I make a motion that we approve Spotsylvania County Schools to become a Bright Futures affiliate.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Braswell, a second by Ms. Shelley. Any discussion? Dr. Meyer.
You know, I think as we look at connecting the dots with the different businesses and communities, I've commented this once before, I think possibly just with talking with Dr. Baker, that sometimes we wait for the businesses to come to us, and we need to change that paradigm. And how can we put ourselves out to be reaching out to the businesses? Example in point would be Lidl, who has a tremendous warehouse here. That is an opportunity for us, you know, and looking at how we structure because we have a lot of, like you said, over 300, you know, business partners, but now creating a structure within which we can make that be a much more effective tool. I think the 3,000 is like Ms. Palmer said, you know, that's minimal fee, but I think we truly need to embrace this and take it to the next level, and I think this will do that. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
On to 14.02, second reading approval of revisions to policy EBB, threat assessment teams, regulation EBB-R-R1, threat assessment procedures, and regulation EBB-R2, threat assessment procedures for employees. Mr. Lynn. That was a lot to say.
Madam Chair, school board members, Dr. Baker, and Dr. Martin. In accordance with the Code of Virginia, Section 9.1-184.A10, the Virginia Center for School and Campus Safety under the Department of Criminal Justice Services developed and provided model policies and procedures to help local school boards establish and operate threat assessment teams to support their schools. Policy EBB and regulations EBB-R1 and EBB-R2 have been revised in accordance with recent changes directed by law and by the model policy and procedures provided by the state agency that I previously mentioned. Changes were composed and reviewed by the Division School Safety Committee and the Division Threat Assessment Committee, and all changes have been reviewed and approved by legal counsel. Administration's recommendation is that the school board approves for second reading the proposed revisions to EBB, EBB-R1, and EBB-R2. Are there questions I can answer for you?
In a motion?
And I will second that motion.
Motion by Ms. Shelley, second by Dr. Meyer. Any discussion? Seeing no questions, all those in favor of approving the second reading? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Lynn.
Thank you.
On to 14.03, the first reading approval of revisions to school board policies, which were deferred FY 2017 cyclical policy review.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion that we approve in block 14.03, first reading approval, revisions to school board policies deferred FY 2017.
Motion by Dr. Meyer, second by Mr. Blaine. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. 14.04, first reading approval of revisions to school board policies, deferred VSBA February 2017 policy review updates.
Madam Chair, I'll make the same motion, first reading approval for the policies deferred from February 2017. For approval in block, first reading.
Second that as well.
Motion by Dr. Meyer, second by Mr. Blaine. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. On to approved of the proposed VSBA legislative positions amendments for the 2017 Delegate Assembly.
I will make that motion.
Motion by Ms. Shelley.
And I will second that motion and also ask that Ms. Shelley be the school board representative in the absence of our board chair.
The motion is slightly amended to include that we will approve Ms. Shelley to be our delegate at the convention, and is seconded by Dr. Meyer. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. On to 14.06, first reading approval of revisions to school board policies JFHA, prohibition against harassment and retaliation of students, JFHA-F, reporting form for students, GBA, prohibition against harassment and retaliation personnel, and GBA-F, reporting form for personnel. Dr. Martin.
You managed that quite well. Madam Chair, members of the board, due to updates regarding the designated compliance officer for the school division, policy JFHA, prohibition against harassment and retaliation for students, and policy GBA, prohibition against harassment and retaliation personnel, are presented this evening for the board's review. The accompanying reporting forms for these two respective policies, JFHA-F and GBA-F, have been revised and are likewise presented for review. Recommendation is that the school board approves for first reading approval the revisions to policy JFHA, JFHA-F, GBA, and GBA-F as presented.
Motion by Mr. Blaine, second by Ms. Shelley, to approve the first reading. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. On to 14.07, first reading approval of revisions to school board policy DK, payment of invoices. Ms. Gaines.
Good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, Dr. Baker and Dr. Martin. With the implementation of our new finance system, we have several major features that we want to highlight tonight. Number one, with the system, we're now paperless, which is good. Also, all the approvals are electronic. Last year, this time, we had approved 9,000 invoices. To date, 12,000. In order to keep up with that workload, we graciously request, myself and Mr. Trayer, that Karen Merriam be added as an approver of those invoices. At this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Can we have a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion by Dr. Meyer to add another approver for payment of invoices, and a second by Ms. Palmer. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thanks, Ms. Gaines. Move on to 15.01, any unfinished business? Mr. Braswell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Several board meetings ago, I brought up an issue in regards to board member communication with staff and the tasking of by individual board members to administration to perform tasks that were not in line with the board as a whole. It's come to my attention that we were tasking Dr. Meyer to perform counts or receive counts of players that were kneeling during the football game.
Dr. Martin, you mean?
Dr. Martin, yeah, Dr. Martin, that was kneeling during the football game. The tasker came from Mr. Twigg. This board never authorized administration to tabulate that data, and to this very point, we don't know who needed the information, what the information was supposed to accomplish once it was attained, and why it was required. This board operates as one entity, not at the beck and hest of individual board members. I come to you now after making that observation the last time we did not act, but I come to present an action item that we constrain this board individually to limit all taskers and communication through this board, through the chair, for information to the administration.
Mr. Braswell has made a motion, Mr. Twigg, so there's a second required before there's discussion.
I will second that.
Second by Ms. Shelley. Now, discussion. Mr. Twigg.
Last I checked, the clerk works for the board. Each of us is the board, and hence all of us should have access to him. All of us should be represented by him. He should be working for us. That's his task. That's his job. So if you want to make a requirement that says what you suggested, that's fine, but it's not right, and it's not right. It's not accurate either.
Mr. Braswell.
Mr. Twigg is in fact correct. Dr. Martin does work for the board, not individual board members. And as a board, we operate on the premise that the majority rule. We have elected leadership, a chairman and a vice chairman. When the taskers go beyond the pale of that information not being shared with the entire group, then it goes outside of the purview of the board and the purview of the intent of the tasker to administration as it pertains to us as a board asking or tasking the administration to provide information. So I stand on that. I believe that that's in fact correct, and I just ask that this board entertain that motion.
I'm going to speak before you respond. I haven't spoken yet, Mr. Twigg. So, the clerk of the school board deals with keeping minutes, deals with everything related to the meetings, VSPA policy, FOIA requirements, those sort of things. The clerk of the school board is not a personal assistant to any of us board members. None of us, all of the board understands that the clerk's role is not to be a personal secretary or an information gatherer. So to require the clerk to gather information for you that has nothing to do about the board meetings, legality, FOIA regulations, VSBA policy, that is outside of the clerk's realm of responsibilities. So that is not his duty to be your secretary. So if you would like information from the administration, which is what that question was done for, we as a board always like to provide why we're gathering the information, and we are sending it as Mr. Braswell requested months ago through the chair, and then that information can be gathered for you. But it's not the clerk's role to be your secretary.
Says you and Mr. Braswell. Now, show it to me in writing. Where do we have this policy written? And I beg to differ with you on his role and responsibility. I'm sure the county
SBA
does
manual
not,
for that,
does
sir.
not operate in that manner. Just as a point of reference. Thank you.
Ms. Palmer.
I think that Mr. Braswell's suggestion is actually more limiting than I would want it to be, in that there are other ways that the board as individuals and then coming together as a whole can request information, one of which is at meetings and during new business. So any policy created or, soft or otherwise, I think should not limit it to speaking through the chair, but choosing one of the venues, one of the methods to get your request out there. So I would just want to add something to the effect that there are other ways you can bring up a request, and then the whole board together can endorse or modify that request.
Mr. Twig, you have many more people to come before you. Ms. Shelley, everyone gets a chance to speak each round.
Thank you. I do like what Ms. Palmer said. I seconded Mr. Braswell's motion, but I agree. If it's in a meeting, then during new business, I think that would be a time to possibly, and then the board can say yes or no as a whole. But if it's outside of a board meeting, if we're requesting information, I think it would be appropriate to go through the chair. We are a collective board. No, we do not have a policy for this, but right now, a motion has come forward, which would not make it a policy, but it would make it a rule, an order of business of the way we do things, if it passes. So, I don't know if there would be a way for Mr. Braswell to amend his motion.
I fully concur with the intent with what you just said. When I originally discussed it, the point that I was trying to bring to this board's attention is that as a board, when we make demands on administration, it should be done in an open forum, and there should be a purpose for the information that we all had an opportunity to vote yea or nay on, and that the majority would have the opportunity to task the administration for information that we asked for. So I guess if I were to amend that, I would amend it in such a way that we would constrain ourselves to tasking administration for information that has been vetted in an open forum, that we all had an opportunity to weigh in on. And then, and once we voted on that, then the administration would be obliged to adhere to it.
I just wanted to read this for the record. Virginia state law says the duties of the clerk of the board are specified by law. In general, the clerk must keep record of meetings and proceedings of the board, a record of all receipts and disbursements, a record of all of his or her official acts, a file of vouchers, contracts, and other official papers, and under the general direction of the superintendent, perform such other duties in connection with school business of the county or city as may be required by the school board or board of education. The clerk is not a member of the board. He or she attends board meetings to record the proceedings and to supply the records and other information which the board may need pertaining to the meeting. It is not his or her function to give advice or counsel to the board, to participate in discussion, or to make decisions. Unless especially authorized, he or she should not give out information about meetings or discuss outside of a meeting anything which transpired in it. He or she is an officer of the board whose function is to discharge certain specified duties under the direction of the division and superintendent and the board. Mr. Twig.
And the first two letters of that, words of that excerpt summarize the essence of how nutty this whole thing is. if we're going to function as a board, we can't all be stymied with running emails to and through one individual on the board. And besides, the people elected me in my district of Livingston, and the great people out there, they want me to represent them. They don't want me to put up with this kind of formal stuff that absolutely makes no sense. Thank you.
Mr. Blaine?
This question and motion is fraught with problems from the beginning. I can certainly see if I see a problem and would like to develop a proposal for the superintendent, I would like to have an option to gain the information I need to make such a proposal. And I think that what we really need to do, we're going to have a new member of the board in a few weeks, that we postpone the discussion of this and make it an instructional section of the workshop that we have right after the first of the year. There's a lot of things all of us can learn about this, and I would therefore move to table the motion.
In respect to my dear colleague, Mr. Blaine, I appreciate his candor in this matter. It's always been my desire that this board not only function with equity, but function with fairness. So I would yield to his consideration that we table and have detailed discussion at a later date so that we are not only giving every board member an opportunity to take full advantage of what the administration has to offer, but at the same time, that one member is not taking advantage of the administration to the chagrin of the others.
And I would like to, we'll vote on the tabling of the motion, but I would like to point out that it is directly and 100% up to the superintendent how board members may contact employees. Employees do not work for the school board. We know that by law. We are not allowed to demand things from employees. It is completely up to the superintendent. So if we continue to abuse these sort of powers, the superintendent is within every right to say, you are no longer allowed to contact employees. Not that I see Dr. Baker doing that. He is a very open administration and the most easy to deal with people and gets us any answers we need. But he is perfectly within his rights to say that we are not allowed to contact the employees. So in an effort to keep this working as the way it has been for many years under Dr. Baker's administration, we will, under Mr. Blaine's advice and other advice, like to get a hold of this and make sure information is being requested and not demanded of people.
Amen. We're all here to serve our constituents. Let's do it.
So, Ms. Palmer?
Sorry.
Since I won't be part of that conversation, I would just, as a board member / constituent, say that I think the number one goal has to be overall courtesy and respect. And as a board member who learned after about some detailed data requests after the fact, you know, as somebody who is new to this group, please consider the fact that there will be another new person, and don't make assumptions about what they know or don't know. And so part of being courteous is communicating with each other, and I have not seen that in these instances. So whatever you decide to do about who has the authority to continue a request, keep in mind that the goal is just common courtesy between the board and staff and individual board members. It's my plea to you all.
Madam Chair and fellow board members, I've been quiet and just listening. I agree with Ms. Palmer, but I also agree with Mr. Blaine. I agree with everybody, but there has to be a balance between when we make so many requests, or as we make requests of staff, whether it's one-on-one or through the chair or through the superintendent, but we have to be cognizant of the demands that we make sometimes, and sometimes we may do it very innocently, but as we make requests for information, we have to understand that we're imposing our need on the staff. And that could be the superintendent or whomever the superintendent then designates. So there needs to be a manner in which we can make requests when they are needed, but someone needs to evaluate, is that something that's immediately needed, or can it be a month from now or 2 months from now? How does it fit within the schedule of what is considered of a priority? Because sometimes we make a request for information and we want it tomorrow or the day after. And that's not being cognizant of the demands of everybody else's schedule. And as our administrative staff is so lean, we cannot be imposing on them just because we have, what we feel is a need for information. Because we could come up with requests for information that can bog down the staff for months if we decided, to do that. So what I'm saying in essence is, we need to have the discussion. I agree with Ms. Palmer, and I agree with Mr. Blaine, when we have a new board member on board, so that there is a common sense approach and a respect for the needs that we have for information, and we'll have a new board member with needs for information, but that as it imposes upon staff, we need to think of what those impositions are, and then how can we regulate ourselves, how can we control ourselves, so that we do it within the bounds of what's reasonable and not over-imposing. And it needs to go through somebody's eyes. And whether it be the chair or just through the superintendent, but there needs to be some guidance given to that, and a guidance which is reasonable and can make a determination. Because when you get into the world of finance, it could be overpowering, just like we've seen requests most recently, for information about all of our health insurance and benefits and all that. That's a ream of information that's just unbelievable. And it takes people's time to put that stuff together. Not to say that's not important, but there needs to be a sense of what's reasonable, what's the imposition time, and so we do need to have that discussion, not to stifle, but that it be done with a sense of respect, I guess would be the word, for other people's time and the imposition on those people's times. With that, I yield, Madam Chair.
Mr. Braswell.
Yeah, it's motion to table. I just want to make one last comment, and I
Mr. Braswell
concur.
wanted to make one
Just want to
last-
make one last comment. I greatly respect the opinion of my peers on this particular matter. My concern is the intent of information. We had a board member ask for specific information about players who were kneeling. And not a one of us on this board knew why he wanted the information or what he intended to do with it once he received it. And that was my concern. I understand the long-term ramifications of what everyone else is referring to, and so I concur with you that we need to table it, have a conversation about it, and then make sure that in the future, when we make taskers of the administration, that it serves the purposes of the board as well, and that we all have an opportunity to determine when information is produced, if it's something that we can use. And if we can use it, does it serve a purpose that the board wants to use?
All those in favor in tabling Mr. Braswell's motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0 to table the motion. Any more unfinished business? You're
Madam
in
Chair,
new business.
It's not just table the motion. Table the motion kills it. It's table for the next, table the discussion till we have our next workshop meeting. That's different.
There we go.
Table with no deadline kills it.
Table until our next workshop meeting.
Thank you.
Right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Any more unfinished business? Miss Shelley?
Mr. Braswell brought up, I think at our last meeting, something about band. Was that you? Brought up something about band and uniforms and something with maybe us helping out from our budget. I would also like to look at maybe also buses. Our bands go to all the, they go to the football games, but they are paying for their own school buses. So I'm just bringing that to the board, if that might be something that we might want to look at as well when we start the budget. Just something to help out our marching bands when they go to the away football games. So I'm just bringing, and competitions and such. So I wanted to bring that, and then I will have something for new business as well.
Any more unfinished business? On to new business. I know Dr. Meyer has something.
Elections are now over, and our representatives have now been chosen, and we usually have a legislative reception with our delegates and senators, and we invite surrounding school divisions. I think Mrs. Daniels has been working on that, but we need to reserve December 13th, 6 p.m., and since that would be a board meeting, because we'll have more than 2 board members, we need to take a motion to approve then the legislative reception for December 13th at 6 p.m. Ms. Daniels, in this room, in school board room. Okay, I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion. Am I allowed to second the motion?
Second.
I really like it, so I wanted to second. I didn't know if I was allowed. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor in making the legislative reception December 13th
6 p.m.
here at 6 p.m.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Braswell.
I just wanted to make a quick announcement to all the board members. On the 29th of November at 6:30 here in the school board office, we're having our banquet for the race for teen violence, and where we give out the awards for the schools that had in the Friendly School Challenge. All board members are invited to attend and enjoy the festivities and take advantage.
Give the date again, please.
6:30 on the 29th of November. All board members are invited to attend.
6:30, November 29th, got it.
Ms. Shelley.
I just was wondering if when and this has come to me from constituents, line judges for volleyball, that we could have high school or volunteers. The students, if we had students doing it, then they would get volunteer hours. And we could also have volunteer parents. And I'm thinking not the parents that belong to that school, parents that belong to another school, or students that belong to another school as line judges. What I understand is that the students can be trained, and it's no cost involved. That's simply volunteering. So just something that I wanted to bring up, and if maybe our task force, our athletic task force could possibly look at that. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Twig, you have new business?
Yes, one item, please. Given the response of our constituents this evening during the public comment, and given that we're all about free speech rights and the longest-standing democracy of the history of our world, And based on phone calls, emails, much discussion with my fellow Livingston residents, and sentimental points raised here this evening by constituents, I do hereby make a motion to adopt the same non-binding policy for the national anthem that exists with our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. So, we have a second.
Do I hear a second? Hearing no second, do we have any other new business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Dr. Meyer, second by Mr. Braswell. All those in favor?